How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Andor Recapped and Reviewed. I'm your host, Root by Root. With me, my co-host, Shabzy.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Welcome to The Red Chill. We're your weekly podcast where we recap and review the latest in TV and movies and everything in between. Welcome to episode 3 of Andor, Recapped and Reviewed. Before we get into the episode, let's just talk a little bit about what's been going on since we had a couple of days since our last podcast. I've been kind of busy playing a lot of Xbox in the last 2 days because
What
the
have you
new
been?
game dropped.
What have
Yeah,
you been playing?
basically a game called Grounded, which
Mm.
had been in preview for like 2 years, and I tried it out 2 years ago. But then
Whoa.
yesterday 1.0 dropped, and I played it a little bit with our friend Sean, and
Mm.
yeah, it's pretty addicting. Um,
What's it about?
Basically, it is Minecraft mixed with Honey I Shrunk the Kids, and you basically just
Oh,
wake up as a tiny person in a garden and you got to figure out what happened and how you're going to get bigger. And it's kind of like a survival game. So it's a lot of foraging, making sure you eat and drink enough. And we basically didn't even do many of the quests. I think we did like the very first thing and like got to like, we got to a point where like we can get quests. And then we decided to just ignore them completely. And we just been building the most epic base ever in the last 2 days. Where, yeah,
it's the base.
I was just doing it before we hopped on this, where like we got way too into it. Where even at the end, we are like, maybe we should actually play the game. You can probably, and our main thought process was maybe you can build a cooler base. You know, the
Mm.
further we get better blueprints. Like you have to
Right.
figure out, like the more you play, you get new crafting blueprints that allow you to buy and build new things. So we're just using the most basic shit in the game, and we're making a whole Taj Mahal out of it. So who knows?
Oh,
Give us a couple of days. I will report back. We might have
yeah.
built an entire town by the time we're done. I was already saying we need a grocery store. We need neighbors. It's gonna be a whole thing.
You'd make
Also,
a great mayor.
we're gonna have to fight to the death for that one.
Oh, I don't think you would make a great mayor anymore.
Also, there's giant spiders in this game, and they are scary as heck. I was like, whatever, spiders, it's gonna be fine. No, they're gigantic and they're freaky, and
Right.
you can't kill them. And yeah, no fun.
No.
And,
Is it also
anyways,
like pixelated like Minecraft, like in terms
no,
of
no, no. It's
the?
actually really good graphics. It's a little cartoony.
Okay.
It's actually made by the guys who did Fallout 7, not 76, Fallout New Vegas,
Okay.
Obsidian. They also did Outer Worlds. Really good RPG developer. That's like Xbox bought recently. And this was basically like a game that 16 employees started and they got really obsessed with it. And now there's just like this gigantic thing with like 10 million players. And yeah, very addicting. Versus very hard to stop. I'm not going to lie.
Glad you did,
But
because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to record
exactly. I,
this.
for the pod. I
Right,
made
for the
sure
bomb.
I did it for the pod. I I clawed myself away from a video game
But
for the pod.
for the bomb. But
But all right.
I am eager to listen to what you accomplished, like in our next episode, or maybe the one after that one.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like we're very much at the beginning of this game. Who knows?
Mm,
There's things we don't even know we can do. We just
right.
like honestly, we haven't played that many survival games. Maybe like I play like Minecraft and a little bit of Ark Evolved and little things here and there, but I never got really into it because you kind of need like people to do it with. So I'm kind of excited that like now I have a homie who's like very much getting into it. But
Cool.
anyways,
Right.
enough about that. We're here for something else. Let us get
Yes.
into
Yes.
episode 3 of Andor. We've done episode 1 and 2 in the last 2 episodes. We watched them all together, but we figured we'll break them down individually, like as if they dropped individually, because it's also we want to see what these are as standalone and what we felt individually. Like watching them all as a package, I feel like it's very
Right.
easy to get lost and forget certain parts that happened in episode 2 or even in the beginning of 3. So yeah,
Yes.
let's get into it.
So, so that's one of the biggest questions I wanted to start off with is you've only seen them all three together, and you haven't rewatched any of them since, right?
No, I was going to
Okay.
rewatch episode 3, but you know why I didn't. I
So
let go.
so I rewatched episode three as a standalone, and I have a lot of feelings about. I have a lot of opinions on watching them all three together, and then having watched just one episode just by itself, with two episodes already watched.
Yeah.
So that's a question that we'll delve into more as we go along the episode. So stay tuned for
Sounds good.
that, and now we'll start with the recap.
Yeah, let's get it going. Shabs took a bunch of
Let's
notes
do
this
it.
time.
Yes. I'm more prepared now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So we're gonna start off with just a quick second of where we left off with episode two. It's that Stellan Skarsgård, whose name is Luthen,
Cool name.
is arriving. Yes, it reminds me of Luther.
Hmm.
But yes, a lot of names that we were discussing as to why they choose such different types of names. Some very similar to Earth sounding names. A name in this, which I will talk about later, is a straight up human name, and it's just weird why that's in there. And we'll
Worse than
discuss that
Tim
later.
with 2 M's.
Yes, worse.
Wow.
It's not worse. The name is good, but I still don't understand the reasoning for not spelling it differently as they did with Tim and Willie,
Oh, this
who
time they
spelled
didn't.
yes, this time it's spelled just like a regular human name, but I don't wanna spoil what it is until we
Okay.
get to that character later on in the
Sure.
episode. But it will spark some conversation on why that name was chosen. When you have names like Zanwan, Bix, Bix,
Yeah.
Cassian Andor, Marva, and Tim with two M's, and Willie without the E at the end. So, and
Willie's a wild
Luthen,
one.
Willie's a wild one. So Luthen
Luthen
was
Vandross.
on his way with Willie to Marlon. I keep forgetting. I
Off
keep
my lawn.
confusing. He's
Gran
that old
Torino
guy.
crossover.
Oh my God! They're off to. He's landing in. Now I have the name all confused. Marlox. What was the name of the planet? Marloni? No, that's
on,
that
on,
sounds like
on
a
the
spaghetti.
scrap planet where Cassian is.
Yes. Do you remember the name?
Not off the top of my head, correct.
Exactly. That's the problem with these names.
They're new.
Molani.
We got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But we'll
Molani.
call it. Well, they refer to it as more, so we'll just call
More.
it.
Okay.
He's landing on Cassian's town.
Yes, that's what we gotta remember. Gorlarmi.
Gorlami.
More Larmy.
Gorlani. But that's not the right name though. So that's.
I thought you said it was more
No.
Larmy.
No. I said it. I think it sounds. I think it's more Morlani, but then
Okay, we
anyway,
go a bit more. They're on their way
Yes.
to more.
They're on their way to more, and he's about to land, and then you see Cassian Andor, who's just taken the device that he's going to sell. He's on his way somewhere. And one thing we didn't touch on last week was the music at the end of when that scene is happening, is that it changes to like really like grungy, like heavy drum music, you know?
Okay.
And it sort of gives you that feeling of, because throughout the music has been like somber, and it's been like Star Wars mixed with like a really emotional somber movie. And now towards the end of this episode, the music like it pumps you up, and it's like, okay, now we're in for something. Like that's what that episode, because last time when we recapped it, the music we didn't touch on because we didn't really listen to it during the recap.
Are you talking specifically when Stellan Skarsgård is flying over more and you can kind of see it out the window, or after that?
So it sort of starts at that moment where and then once you see the spaceship, it sort of pans down to Cassian walking somewhere.
Yeah.
Like he's walking towards the camera. Yeah. And that music starts playing. You know, it's like heavy drums, and you're like, oh,
get ready.
Like what's gonna happen
episode
next?
3.
Exactly. And yeah, so now we start with okay, we start with the scene, which is I named it Straight Out of Lost, and it's young Cassian entering the spaceship, the one where everyone was. I don't think we can recap.
Yeah, it's another flashback.
yeah, it starts with the flashback, and it starts with a really long view of, and it's almost identical to the lost the underground bunker, and it had that ladder that goes up and that little hole, except that's like going up, and this was like coming this way, so
Okay.
that it was like an entrance, and yeah, so you see him walk inside, and and he's entering the spaceship, and he's like all scared, but he's like showing like bravery, and and then he sees like all the space crew members, they're like yellow faces, and then he's just looking around, looking at all the tech, and it's like a great contrast of like this young savage kid, you know, with a spear, and he's got like paint on his face and all this like future tech that the way he looks, he's probably seeing it for the first time,
I was going to
and
ask.
this
I
comes
actually
back
don't
later.
remember correctly if he how he was looking at it. But yeah, it looked like
Yes,
it was the first time, right? That would
yes, yes,
again brings up the question of what is the history of these kids? What happened to the parents? Because like,
exactly.
but I guess even if they
Yeah,
were minors, but you'd still think as like minors would have probably had some sort of tech, where these kids look very low tech.
yes, and or maybe even perhaps that Cassian and his sister were just too young to have seen anything like that. It's like it's like a 6-year-old kid. Well, today, nowadays is very different, but like when we were growing up, when tech was like more like, you know, you would there was like less access to tech as there is today. A 6-year-old kid, when he goes into like a big mall for the first time, like he's just in wonderment and like shock. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing it was. But the visual, the optics of it was very clear, of like this boy with a spear and like raggedy clothes, paint on his face, and then this super fancy tech that we don't even see where Cassian is as an adult within his town. So and that actually comes back way later. So I'll reference that. That's why I wanted to mention that very in like a lot of detail. But yeah, so and then he sees another cool small little detail, that the thing is with the show is that they have so many little details that don't really matter within the plot of the story, but it's just cool to put that kind of thought and emphasis on like these tiny little character moments where you get to understand them just a little more just a little more better, just a little bit better, you know.
Well, interesting that you mentioned that because I actually saw Kevin Smith recently talk a little bit about Andor, and his point was actually that compared to the other Star Wars shows, specifically like Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, like those shows really lived in the medium to wide angle, where this show is really living in the close-ups in between each shot, where they're giving you a lot of detail, and I think that's why everything feels more lived in, and
Mm,
you can feel it, like even without paying close attention to these close-ups, it just adds a little bit of more connection to it. Where I think people were getting a bit oversaturated with um the
wide
big
angles.
screen. No, like they were using the volume on these other shows, and then in between it was starting to look a little bit like a set. Where in Mandalorian they used it really well to extend their sets and make them look very grand, where Boba Fett and Obi-Wan specifically had a couple of scenes and moments where you're just kind of like, okay, this looks kind of limiting, where like we're in a giant city but we're living in this alleyway, or like in these
Mm,
closed off spaces, where
right.
here they're not only doing it with the great open vistas of what looks like a lot of on location shots, but they're also going into detail very much. And I think it's very noticeable that way.
Yeah.
But
And it's cool that you're talking about, like you're looking at it from like like detail of the world, and I'm looking at it also from like obviously you mentioned about the close-ups and stuff. What that also does is um, gives us a way closer look into the character themselves, where even these tiny moments that don't really need to be in the show, that like even if they were not there, it won't make the show any like worse in terms of how it's shown and uh how everything goes along, but it just adds a little extra to that moment, and you as a viewer are actually able to feel more for the characters once you have gone through these little moments with them, and you sort of feel like you've experienced it with along with them as you would if you were in that situation.
Yeah, I
But
personally
yeah,
think
so
close-ups give you a bigger connection to characters. Like that's where I would
right,
use a
mm,
close-up to like show either in emotion or like yeah, just connect you more to the
mm,
environment even. You can it's
right,
really I feel like a close-up takes you into a world. That's where
right.
if it's used smartly.
Mm, good point. But yeah, so we see this like uh we were at Cass Cass, that's how I wrote him in my notes. That's
Yeah,
what
man.
everyone calls him, so it's fine.
Our boy Cass.
Yeah, yeah. My young the young Cass. He's gonna be the next rapper, uh, the next Latino rapper,
Young
next
Cassidy.
Pitbull. Young Cassidy. No, Young Cass. But yeah, so Cass discovers all this new tech, and then there is the close up of him like seeing his reflection, and obviously like it could just be like him seeing his reflection, but what I took it as was like him always living out on that beach type area. I don't think he ever like saw his reflection in something as like almost like clear and solid. He's probably seen it in like the river and stuff like that. And he looks at himself and he gets like this super angry look. And right from that you cut to the current cast or middle-aged cast at his construction site. And this was a cool scene where you see the whole like construction site because we've only seen like small little bits sprinkled throughout. First you meet his friend who's a construction worker, and then you see their sort of morning ritual where they just put the gloves and you see them doing like small little things. Now you see them like all this big machinery that's being built. And you see, and then it pans on to all the construction workers like doing like the small little bits, like the roles that they've all been assigned to. And yeah, and it's like such a huge contrast to like the future tech that young Cass was looking at in the spaceship to now old Cass looking at all this super janky construction site, like this raw industrial looking mechanical shit, Jake. You
Look
see
how
like like
look how far our young boys come.
exactly, but he's actually from where he was to where he is. It's almost like his
It's not
like
that much better.
environment sort of yeah, it's his environment sort of like a reflection of himself as what he grew up into,
Good
right?
point.
Yeah, sort of it. I didn't have that in my notes. But yeah, okay. So yeah, and uh, and you see again the quick shot of a tube on the construction site, and it's like showing the contrast. There's a lot of compare and contrast, like with just location shots and like imagery sprinkled all throughout this episode that I noticed. And I'll keep mentioning that, I guess, throughout the recap. And and yeah, so now you see Cassian. He's speaking to his construction worker friend, and he's like, "Hey, I'm meeting the buyer today, and I'll have the money." And he's like, "Oh, when you gonna have it?" He's like, "I'll have it today." And construction worker guy's like, "Come on, man, that doesn't sound good." And he's like, "No, no, no. I promise. I'll leave the money with Marva, who's the old lady, his adopted mother." And he's like, "She'll give you what I owe." So now you get to know. Okay, so he owes him money as well, and then he says, "Hey, keep an eye out for her if you can." Sort of like indicating to his friend that, hey, I won't be around, and yeah, so we sort of get to know like where he's at with his friends. And then you cut to the it's called the shuttle ferry. I had the subtitles on this time when I watched the episode, so that all the descriptions are there exactly as they intended it to be. And it's because it looks like a bus, right? But it's called the shuttle ferry. And again, like a very tiny detail that I noticed was that when the shuttle ferry lands, there's this tiny little staircase just automatically comes in front, like how we have on airports,
Yeah.
like those big stairs that attach to the plane for people to get down. Here it's like this tiny little thing, almost like a droid, and it just attaches itself to the ferry, and people just walk down. Now they're cool, like Like they didn't need to have all these little things move around and like it's but it's cool that they put so much attention into all these little details.
I feel like
I appreciate.
it feels like the whoever is creating the show is taking it serious, the fact that they're
Yeah.
introducing new things and
Yes.
they're making the most out of it, and like they know that Star Wars fans love these details where like we need to
Right.
know every name of
Mhm.
every ship and every
Right.
droid, and everything has to be somewhere attached to some lore. So for them
Mhm.
to not only create new lore but also give us so much detail in it is really cool to see.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. And now, so you see, so Willie, our boy Willie, and Luthen, they get off together, and Willie sort of he's like, "Hey, you're gonna stay at a hotel?" And Luthen's like, "No," and he's like, "Yeah, good choice." He's like, "Watch out for your wallet." So it's like everybody who doesn't live in Cassian's town, like out of towners, all like Cassian's town has the reputation of being like a shady place for out of towners. And Luthen and so Luthen and Bix are just they meet now, and Bix tries to explain to Luthen that there's been an issue, that there's been a warrant out for Cassian, and Luthen's like, "Oh yeah, I heard what he did." Like, but he doesn't mind. He's like, "It's okay. I'll meet us. I'll still meet him." And then you see that cool shot of it's called a Primor. That's what Marva calls them, the soldiers and the officers, and our main villain,
The
whose
corporals.
name, yes, the corporals. There we go. I forgot what we were calling
I think it's
them.
corpo because they're the corporation, right?
Right, they're corporate officers, soldiers. They're
Yeah.
referred to some, not these two, but like the other guys, the guys that they're with. So you see the scene of warp speed, a triangle shaped spaceship that they enter in the corporals. And again, it's like all that stuff is so sleek from the inside, and it's like cool looking, and they have that warp speed, and you see the contrast. And here is where I got to know their names. So we have Sergeant Linus Mosk, who's uh, the
Leader.
shorter leader guy, right?
The soldier
The
type
army man.
who seems
Yes,
like
yes, the
he's seen some battle before.
yes, the army man. And our main villain's name is Cyril. No, it's Cyril, Syril.
Cyril. Okay.
Cyril Karn,
Karn.
Karn.
Cyril Karn.
Yeah,
Pretty dope
Cyril
name for a
Karn.
villain, even though he's such
You
a
think so?
weak
Right.
character in terms of like a weak personality. Great
Yes.
character, but like he's Cyril Karn. Like
Yes.
that's a Star Wars name.
Exactly. But here's two things I think of, right? When I hear the word Khan in like a fantasy thing, I think of Khan from Star Trek. So that's one thing. And then Cyril as being a really weak type of personality, who I thought of was Cyril from Archer. I don't know if you remember that.
Who's Cyril and Archer? I don't remember.
He's the guy who dates Lana, the weakling guy.
I don't even
that,
remember.
that, oh my god. Okay, he's the guy. He's the other guy. The
New
guy Archer
season
always dates
apparently
Lana.
dropped. Need to still check that out.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Archer in like maybe 7 years.
Yeah, it's been a
But
while since I checked
yeah,
it.
but
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 I still think
this is the first I thought of
if
Archer in so long.
I think if you hit the Karn, you really hit that R in the
Yes.
Karn, Cyril
Mm.
Karn,
Karn.
then
Karn.
it's powerful. I think it's a
Right.
powerful name, which like kind
Yeah.
of contrasts the guy, which like maybe he's gonna grow into that, where like later he is going to be like an imperial. Well, that's what I was thinking. Where like maybe what we're seeing is the origin of him,
Yes.
like we're seeing
Yes.
Endor's origin,
Yes.
and maybe I think it's 3 years before Rogue One and the end of Andor. I think after see two I don't. We still don't know if it's 3 seasons, but it's definitely 2 seasons. And they said it's going to end with the beginning of Rogue One. So maybe we see Cyril Karn right now as a low rank security guy in the corporation, but later Endor has to infiltrate like a Republic base or something and has
Right.
to go against the Empire. And who's going to be on that base? our boy
Yes,
maybe
our boy.
upgraded, promoted after he's
Zero.
been doing his thing. Maybe
Yes.
could be cool, you know.
So I have a lot of opinions on that, but we'll get to that like more so as we go along with him because I found him to be, as I said, in like his first scene. I was like so like, wait, what's going on? What kind of an actor is this? And this looks so bad. And are they really doing this? And then now I almost feel like I feel bad for him. I almost pity him, you know,
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, like you're like you're like this insecure and the first thing I thought of, well, not the first thing, but like I started realizing that you know who he reminds me of? Kylo Ren.
yeah. In a
Where
way,
if you think of like this just spoiled, bratty child who's now got all this power around him, but he himself is not powerful, but he wants to be like a cool badass. Like, you know, I'm gonna be a cool badass army guy. Like he's probably like we discussed, like he's seen movies or something, and Sergeant Mosk is sort of the guy he wants to be like,
yeah,
but he's not that, and he's just like this weird, cowardly, like emotional brat, and he's like you know the like straight from the beginning, his commanding officer was like, no, you can't do that. Like we're not going to pursue this further. We're just going to come out with a story and be done with this. And it's almost like he threw like a temper tantrum.
yeah.
Where it's like, oh, what? Like, how dare you say no to me? And he goes like behind his back and still goes off on this thing. And it like as we'll discuss later, uh, well, we didn't really do a spoiler. Well, we're in spoilers, don't worry. So, but we'll discuss it later as how that ends up badly for him. And like you said, like along with Andor, at the end of this episode, you're like, oh my god, it's like our villain is also set up.
Yeah.
Where it's the same thing of like Rey and Kylo Ren, where our hero and villain were set up by the end of Force Awakens, and that's exactly how I felt. And I'll go a little deeper into that a
I
little bit later.
I really like the fact that they lean into his awkwardness a lot. It
Yes,
makes him
yes,
feel very relatable.
yes. You can see that you can, and he's like I said, his first scene, I was like, he seems like the worst actor to pick for a role like this for a stern soldier. Now every little facial expression he makes, I'm like, dude, I know how you're feeling. Like if I was trying to be like a cool badass and then I was put in the situation, even I would be like, oh my god, like do I really fit in? Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned like his awkwardness and how and so that so I mentioned that where uh, the moment uh, you get to that warp speed thing, the first thing you see when you go inside the ship is Mosk walking through with like all the troops are there, and then Mosk is like you got the shot of him walking towards the camera, and he's like fully like dictating to everyone like this is the strategy. We're gonna walk north team do this and south team do that. And then you see our boy Cyril just like in the background somewhere, just like looking around. And you're like, dude, you should be doing this. Or like, you should be the guy like standing like this, like, while Mosk is like, but you just see like he's just like somewhere in the
I
background
mean,
of all
it's
this.
important to remember that it wasn't his idea to go. It was Mosk who was like, you know,
Yes.
an officer like you would bring a lot of morale to the team. You should be out there. And he's like, yeah, oh, you're right. I should. Totally.
No, no, but right before that, he was the one who actually, well, you're right in a way that it was Mosk's idea, but Mosk didn't outrightly say it. I think he kind of indicated it because while Mosk is talking about like we should go do this, it's like he pauses for a second, and that's when Cyril is like, "I should come along, right?" And it's almost like he was hoping for a yes or a no, and then when Mosk was like, "Yes, sir, I think it'll be good for you," and he goes, "Okay, I guess, yeah, okay, I'll do it."
Yeah. But I think they
And
made it
now
very
he's
clear
on.
that like he wasn't really
He's
like
very unsure.
yeah, he wasn't really prepared to be out there. And now
Yes,
you can really see it while he's out there.
yeah. Now that he's in the thing where it kind of reminded me of, I'll do a quick shout out to us where we kept talking about doing a podcast. And then once we really did a podcast, I felt like Cyril. I was like, oh my God, like, do I, like, but maybe my origin story is being set up along with it.
Yeah,
So,
come back in season 2 and see if Shabzi has become the
exactly.
villain.
Exactly. And Root's the hero of this. But in the beginning, it's almost like you feel bad for Cyril, and you kind of don't like you like Cassian obviously because you've seen him in Rogue One, and you know that he's a good guy, just like brought up in a very uh, bad way and in a bad tone. But the fact that he's always in debt to everyone and he impacts all his close friends' lives, like who are just honest workers, and he impacts their lives in such negative manners, you don't like him that much, right? If we didn't know that, we discussed this, that if we didn't know that he's the hero and that we've seen him in Rogue One being the hero, we would just be like, dude, I get that you're from a bad place, but you're still being like not a great person to all your friends.
He's a scoundrel.
Yes, he's a scoundrel. Exactly. He's that friend that you're like, dude, just stop borrowing money, please. Just manage your issues. Like, at some point, like we're running out of money. It's just like he just doesn't learn, and he just keeps getting into shit, and you're just like, we can't keep doing this, dude. And yeah, and I like that Cyril is like he's like trying to do the honorable, noble thing as a police officer would, where he's like, some random scoundrel just gunned down our two cops, and we're just gonna let this slide. We're not even gonna make an attempt to find him. But it clearly you see that he takes it too far because he's a spoiled brat and he's not in check with his emotions completely. But yeah, so that now we'll cut back to the flashback with young Marva walking in with BYOB, our boy, the droid,
Looking
and
fresh.
another.
That's when I realized that our boy B2 emo was looking real run down. Like I knew he was run down, but like seeing
Right,
him
right.
like all working real well, it made me feel even
Yes,
worse for the little guy.
yes, yes, yes. He was working smoothly and flowing with her at full speed.
Yeah.
And you also see another younger person who's younger than Marva, black person. We don't know his name right now, but I got to know his name because of subtitles, but I don't think it was ever mentioned. That's the weird thing about all this is that names are mentioned in subtitles, but a
Yeah,
lot of the times
they
they're
do that.
not. It's not mentioned while talking, and then there's a bit of a future spoiler. I don't know why, but I won't mention it right now. But once I finished the episode, I actually saw the cast in the closing credits, and there's like names given where you sort of get to know details that you don't know even after watching this episode. So
Yeah, but it's something
I
that
just thought that was an
happens
interesting.
in movies all the time. Where,
Yes, yes,
especially in Star Wars movies, where that's how they get the names of like this random dude in the background who
right,
just
right.
you know like didn't do much, but he was mentioned there with a name. So you're like, okay,
And that's where all the Wikipedia knowledge goes into,
exactly.
right? Okay. But yeah, so his name is Clem, and the reason I wanted to mention that is I just don't want to keep referring to him as black person. That's why. So, yeah. So Clem and Marva and BYOB, they're entering the spaceship, the same spaceship that young Cass is in, and they're talking about like, hey, we don't have time for this. Like, what are we doing? And and yeah, sorry, go on. You want to say
I was
something?
just gonna. I mean, we kind of know that because Cassian went in there without a mask, but it was interesting that she, to me at first, when she takes off the mask, showing that like whatever killed everybody is not there
Right,
anymore.
right, right, right. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally forgot about that.
Which is like I also
Yes, you're
didn't
right.
even think about it until I saw with the
Yes.
gas mask, and I was like, wait, but there's like some chemical explosion that went out on in
Right,
there.
right,
You know,
right.
like this kid just ran in there. It can't be safe.
Oh, that's true. I actually didn't even notice that. Like, well, while Cassian was in there, that he's
Yeah,
without a mask
me
and
neither.
he's looking at all the yellow faced people. Like,
I only got it
mm,
like once she took the mask out, and I was like,
right,
"Oh
right, right.
shit!" Like I was just worried about the kid going into this like ship by himself
Yeah,
because
yeah.
more people might be alive.
Right,
Afterwards, I was like,
right.
"Okay, no, not only that, also everybody
Yeah,
just died because of some yellow smoke."
yeah.
And how
Right.
did Marva know? Well, I guess maybe she has something to check with.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so she checked this. I noted
Okay.
this down, but I just forgot to mention it. Or actually, I
Yeah.
did note it down. Maybe that's why I forgot. But the
She does
first
check.
thing they mentioned, yeah, she checks something and she's like, she tells Clem, she's like, oh, there's the toxicity levels has gone down. and whatever was toxic is now okay. So it's like you can take off that mask of yours. Like she sort of is like sort of like smart alecky to her, and he's like,
So
"Yo, I said like to be careful," and she's like, "No, come on, just take that thing."
so in a
Yeah,
different universe, Cass went in there and just died.
right, exactly.
Like if he came 5 minutes earlier.
Or he turned into an alien from Prometheus or Alien Covenant. It's what we were talking about. I don't know if we had that in a podcast or not, but but we
It
talked
looks
about
like
that.
he ate way too many eggs.
Yes, exactly. But or maybe that's what he was looking into the reflection for. Actually, now that I think about it, he saw all these guys with yellow faces.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
he looked into the reflection to see his own color.
What if he's
Like, oh
turning yellow?
no, yeah. Oh, there we go. Maybe that's what that was. It wasn't my
Could be.
nonsense about looking into
Never
something
having a
solid.
mirror.
Yes, because I was like, they had like some janky shit on that island with them.
Yeah,
I'm sure they had a mirror.
I didn't want to point it out, but in my head I was also like, they probably like,
I know.
yeah,
While I was saying that, I thought of it, but I was like, I guess I'm just on. I might as well finish this point.
maybe he has very still water, you know.
Oh yeah, the water runs deep.
In some water, the reflection can be good enough, right? Like, I don't know. Like Simba
Not as
used
good as
water; he was fine.
not as good as a super clean spaceship, but it wasn't a mirror. That's the problem.
Exactly.
So it was just like a piece of metal that he looked into. But I guess the yellow making sure he's not turning yellow, that
Could
makes
be.
a lot more sense. I'm just gonna go with that, I guess.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, just edit out everything I said in the beginning.
Yeah, everybody just do a mental edit. It never happened.
Exactly. Yeah. Do a Men in Black mental edit of that whole moment. Okay. Reeling it in. Uh, so yeah. So they talk about the thing, and they're like entering, and they're talking about like. So you get the idea that they were stealing some things, and he's like, hey, we don't have time. We have Imperials chasing us, and she's like, no, we've come this far. We might as well check. And he's like, don't get greedy. And then suddenly they start hearing banging and they're like, "Oh my god, I don't want to go in there. What's going to go on?" And then they see that it's a young Cass just destroying everything. And Clem's like, "Hey, I like what you're made of, kid." And I was like, "Wait, what? Is that the first thing you're gonna say?" Like that's the one thing that I noted. I was like, "Wait, what? Well, how are you gonna be just like, hey, I like what you're doing there, kid?" It's like, dude, some kid is just like some random kid is in the spaceship. He's just destroying everything. A place that you thought no one was going to be other than Imperial crew members. But yeah, and and you see he starts trying to like say something, and she's like, and Marva's like, oh, he doesn't understand what you're saying, and
You think this is
yeah.
how it goes when Angelina Jolie goes to Africa?
This is what's gonna make us explicit. Oh my god. Lord. But yes, so the BYOB is like, yo, the Republic is approaching, and then it cuts back to the corporal ship, and it's like approaching Marlocks, uh, and then you see uh, in my notes autocorrected mosque to most, so that's why I was a little confused. Because I was like, most leading the charge. I was like, who's most leading the charge? And then I realized that it's mosque. That's why I had a small moment of confusion there. And even it's the same thing, right? So their ship lands, and then you see mosque coming out just straight up, like, okay, East team go here, West team go come with me, and do this, do that. And the reason I mentioned that is again showing us that he's clearly, and you just see him, he's not even like the second guy who like Cyril should be the first guy walking out, and then Mosque following him, giving instructions to everyone. That's how that visual scene.
I would put him second, just because you don't. It's the higher ranking officer shouldn't be the first guy to get shot. At least like some kind of meat shield, but he shouldn't be at the back.
No,
I'm just saying, yeah,
but no,
as a war strategic.
like how they depicted the scene is that once they're landing, right, they know exactly, like it's not like they're gonna get shot. They're like the guy just starts talking while he's walking. So my point was like what you said, like he's not like second also, like visually, like just for the audience, when you see Cyril walking in and then Mosque following him and then the other guys following him, visually you understand what's happening.
Yeah.
But in this, they make it a point to show that Mosk is leading the charge, and Cyril is like literally like the fifth guy. Like he just sort of walks somewhere
He looks like
along with
he's
the
just
other
part
guys.
of the crew. Like he doesn't look like
Yes.
he's in charge of anything.
He kind of feels like Mosk's younger brother who didn't want to be in the army, but Mosk is like, hey, I'll get you a job, come work with me, you know? And now he's stuck in this mission and he doesn't know what to do and he's trying to get along. I've made this analogy a lot of times where he feels like the kid of the guy who owns the company, and he doesn't really belong there. But yeah, along with the older employees who've been there for years and now they have to take charge from him. Yeah. So and oh yeah, so this is important. While he's walking, right? They're walking through the town. He's like observing the whole place, Marlox, and it's like you see he gets like a look of disgust. It's not like, oh my god, like look at this town. It's so messed up and so poor. Like he gets like this, oh god, look at these fucking people. And then he makes eye contact with a construction worker, and and you see the construction worker just like not breaking eye contact, right? He doesn't like look down or anything. The guy walks front and then he gives him a quick look back like that again, where it's like he had that moment of like, dude, you're gonna disrespect me like that? You're gonna look at me? Like he had I could tell from, maybe I'm completely wrong or like over analyzing the thing, but that's how I completely got that scene. Yeah, oh, sorry, I thought you were gonna say something.
Oh no, I
uh,
agree that
oh, yeah.
it's probably
Right,
what it was.
right. And you could, like, what I noted was like it's kind of like you can have like some kind of a social commentary discussion on that, where it's like you've seen this in real life, where you see like privileged people or people who abuse their power, like how there's like a lot of like the BLM movement, where they talk about like, and you see like sometimes like entitled cops or like entitled people who are like in uh, positions of privilege, and they walk through like the company and they look at minorities not through empathetic eyes, but more so through like disgust and like how can you guys be like that? It reminds me of like Americans, like Patrick Bateman, where
What
he
it,
looks at beggars as like, oh my god, what's wrong with you, instead of like, oh, what happened to you, you know what I mean? Right.
what it made me think of was that it was also showing that he probably hasn't been in these type of environments very often. You know, like
Yeah, that's
it's
my point, like,
out of his comfort zone. Where for him, he's probably just heard about it, and that's why he has
yeah,
like this. They're below me
I-
because look at this place compared to where I'm from. Yeah.
exactly. So his first reactions are like, instead of like if we were to see that kind of thing, we would probably have some compassion right out the bat, right? But him, for he's not only is he uncomfortable, but he's also got like, people live like this, what's wrong with them, right? Like blaming them for being in a situation like that, rather than trying to understand how they are, and he's just completely detached from a world like this, where he's never seen like poor people or like seen battle in his life. Like that's why he can't even, he's trying to be like Mosk, but he can't even bring himself to act like that. But yeah. So uh while they're going by, you hear one of the construction workers talking to themselves, and they're like, "Oh, haven't seen any blues in a while." And the other guy, and the other one goes, "They're probably here hunting somebody." So you get the idea of like what the relationship these town people have with these corporal officers.
I
And
hope
one
they
of the
get
guys,
into like when it's the blues and when is it stormtroopers. Like I guess
mm,
stormtroopers are like the soldiers and the blues are like the police. I guess.
yeah, so yeah, I think that's what it is. I think they're more like a little lower rank, like stormtroopers are probably for the Empire, and they reference the Empire in this. So they reference Imperials, the Republic, and the Empire. And I got confused. I just kind of jumbled all three into my head as just one, the evil Empire in my mind. Shout out to Rage
I
Against
think
the Machine.
earlier I said Cass will break into a Republic base. I think I meant Imperial base, but anyways.
Right. Yeah, there we go. So I get very confused with
Yeah, me
all
too
this.
sometimes.
But yeah. And so yeah. So that scene ends there, and then we get to old. How should I call him? Just Cass. I'll say Cass
Yeah.
when he's current day Cass, and then young Cass. Okay, I'm not gonna say old Cass,
6-year-old
or I'll say
Cass. Well,
Cassian.
actually, we don't know how old. I think he's 12 or something. Anyways,
Yeah,
young Cass,
exactly.
Cass.
Young
There you
Cass
go.
and Cass, my boy Cass, Cassian Andor. Uh, he's You see him enter the meeting place, which is like this huge industrial place. And I wanted to mention how really like visually it looks like such a cool scene. Like this whole episode, there's so many scenes that are so well shot for someone like me who doesn't understand like cinematography at all, but as just like watching it as just a viewer, like I can tell, like, wow, man, that's such a cool, like the lighting is so cool and the way it's shot, and like it's not just like a typical TV. Like they put a lot of thought into making every scene look unique and interesting and visually appealing. Yeah, maybe you could like
No, I totally
give your
agree. I
opinion
think
as a.
I've been saying it before that the set design in general,
Mm,
the set designers, costume designers, everything is very much on point. Where even if you're not into film, it stands out. Same as with those close-ups and showing you all the details.
mm,
Right? They're not afraid to show you the detail, which is like,
yeah,
if you don't have the money or the talent, it's easy to like hide everything, but
yeah,
the fact that it's everything, like if you freeze frame any moment in this show, most of the time you can look in any corner and there
yeah,
will be some detail that is interesting to look at or helps the composition in a certain way. And
right,
yeah, I think that is why the show feels different, why it feels
yeah,
more I don't want to say realistic, but more grown up, I guess, because it's more about like they're willing to take the time to show this and
yeah,
build this and create this. And like we were saying last episode, they like to stay in the moment and they're not afraid to. They don't need to cut away all the time. you know
yeah. And like it's also like the reason they're not afraid to show the detail is because they've put a lot of effort into it.
yeah.
And it's effort that it's not like nonsense effort where you compare it to like something like the prequels where there's so much detail in every little shot, but it's kind of like nonsense detail. It has no impact on anything. In this, every little detail is something that it doesn't, like I said, it like they didn't need to show that little stair thing, but it makes sense within the world.
Yeah.
And all the details makes you feel like the world and the characters are way more believable in this random dystopian far off planet
Yeah.
where there would be a town like this and there would be people like this that just have tech that's different to us, and they have like aliens, some humans, and yeah, and for like a TV show, sometimes I forget that it's a TV show. Like the way
Yeah.
it looks like it has like the sets and stuff. None of it. It all feels like real locations, and everything feels like so rich and feels like has such a high budget that there's so many movies that feel like trash in front of this. Especially when it comes to like CGI, because this is a Star Wars thing. So they have so much shit that they would have had to like if they had to practically do it, like there would be so much like just in raw material. How much stuff would they have to collect to make it look so believable and lived in? Where like you could just add that in CGI. But the reason I point this out is because there's a scene at the end, which was the first moment where I sort of realized that CGI might be being used, and it's when it's at a close up of the characters, right? And
Yeah.
I'll get to that scene like obviously at the end, but the point was like that scene made me realize that all the other backgrounds that I've been noticing feel so much more real that it's insane that this is like a TV show and this is just like episode 3. Like I would have expected this kind of thing from like Rise of the Skywalker or something like that,
No, Disney is becoming
or even Rogue
insanely
One.
good at hiding the CGI, even where
Right.
there is so much more CGI being used than you can ever imagine. But it's at such a point where like you don't notice it. Where like
Yeah.
when for in Doctor Strange 2, there a scene happens and you're like, oh, the CGI didn't look that great in that scene.
Mm.
There's probably a few hundred that they did in the 10 minutes leading up that you didn't notice. And it's, I
Right.
think they're becoming really good at this. There's been controversy about them overworking the CGI artists, and generally there's been talk that they're going to like ease up on it a little bit.
Right.
But they
Thank
are
God.
they are at the top of the game. Like there's no one else who does it at the level that Disney is doing it with Star Wars and Marvel. It's pretty incredible. Where as someone who always wanted to be a filmmaker, I look at that
Right.
stuff and I'm like, I even if you tell me how to do it, it sounds so complicated and difficult.
Right.
Doesn't even
Yeah.
sound like
Like
filmmaking anymore.
even for me, like as like a regular person, like when I think about it, like first of all, the show, the way the show is written and the way the world is built, it's easier to not use CGI because a lot of the stuff is like stuff that you would like. It's not special effects to that extent where you need like Doctor Strange like special effects, but the kind of detail that they have in every little thing and the kind of tech that they use and all that stuff could be like if people were lazy, they would just use CGI for that. But for them, it's like every little thing, even like far off in the distance, it doesn't feel like CGI. It feels like it's actual practical effects. And even for someone like me who has no idea about filmmaking or anything, I just look at it and I'm like, my God, like how much what for every scene they would need like so much raw material that they would need specifically designed to look like this because nothing on earth looks like that. Like there's things that are similar to that, but there's still like so many different types of things. Like even in the area that now Cassian enters, which is the meeting place, it's like this industrial looking place, but they have like these huge chains attached to these huge like boulders. They're not boulders, but like it's like
Mm,
metal.
Ancients, I thought, or something like that.
Yeah, engines, but like they're like huge, and it's not like with like a chain fence, and there's so many of that in this entire big like metal warehouse, and yeah, it's amazing that they put this kind of effort into building the world for them. They don't need to, but they do it, you know, and it completely enhances the viewing experience. Yeah. So he enters the thing, the meeting place, cut to flashback, and Marvel feels she starts feeling protective over the kid. She's like, "Hey, we can't just leave him here, because and Clem's like, yo, we gotta leave him. What's wrong with you? There could be like he could have friends, family, and she's like, what friends, family? Everybody's dead. Like that's what out of counters who are not from Canary think happened.
Doesn't he actually say he has somebody? Like, didn't he first assume there is somebody waiting for him, and then she's like, "No." I thought
Yeah,
that's
so
what.
so
Yeah.
Clem, so that's what Clem was saying that like Clem's like, hey, he probably has people here like his friends or like someone friend or family, and she's like, no, like every no one's nobody's alive here, and and he's like, hey, and they're like, Clem's like, no, but the Republic's coming, we gotta get out quick, and she's like, if the Republic comes, they're gonna see him next to a Imperial officer that him he's killed. That's what they're assuming, and they're just gonna kill him. And so she
They
starts feeling
assume this little kid blew 30 darts into this one Imperial
yes.
officer.
So that was
He just stood there. Going,
I was
he
like,
went down after the
and
first one, but Cass just stood
yes,
there and went,
or from far where it's like how we talked about where he was getting hit by darts after darts, but he was still able to shoot. So if it was just one person trying to like that dude would have run away in a second. Like there's no way he could have even stunned him by himself.
Cass
But
had like an automatic dart machine. Where,
yes, exactly. That's what I'm. That would
this
be
kid's
amazing.
crazy. Look what
It's
he did to
crazy.
the control room.
He blew up this whole ship and breathed like some toxic gas. That would have been fun. Like I mentioned, I've always mentioned this. Like if there was a show about just like these Goonies in space, Lord of the Flies in space, where it's like there's these savage kids on some random island living by themselves, and now a spaceship crashes into there, and there's now they have to fight the spacemen.
Well,
And I would watch that show.
when they're done with Andor, they can do the next show and they keep going backwards. So
You're
then we
right.
get the show about
Right.
the kids. Then we get
Right.
the
There we go.
show about the mining facility. Then we get
Yes.
a show about a construction site that built the
Because
mining facility. We,
Prequelception.
we keep going back until we're back in the
Yes.
original trilogy.
Hmm. And then we just come back to Earth. Like at one point, they'll just show like Earth as it is, because it's like a galaxy far, far away and a
A
long. Oh
long,
no, a
long
time long,
time
long ago.
ago.
Oh right, right.
Yeah, that
All right,
can't
right,
work with Star Wars. We find Earth 2, which is just
right. We find
Earth,
Earth.
but like,
We find
is
Earth zero.
yeah. I actually
We
find out
find
that
Earth
we're
zero.
on Earth 365, and
Right there we go.
yeah,
That's yeah.
it's this
We
weird
figure
planet
out
that's
what
in an
Earth we are
endless
now.
cycle.
We figured out the whole Star Wars franchise. Disney better pay us for this if they don't take our ideas.
Right?
Imagine 3 years, like 2 years from now, that shit starts happening. I want to be pissed.
We'll wait for our check in the mailbox.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm gonna wait for my not in the mailbox, dude. I'm gonna have them wire that shit.
Fine. I like to go old school. I want like an oversized, comically sized check. Like I want something.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I would like that too. I still can't figure out online payment, anyways. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so she's like feeling, and she like does she doesn't want to leave him behind. That you're right. I that was one of my few problems with the episode, where I'm like, you're making a lot of assumptions about just kidnapping this child that you just saw. Like you can't, and she's like, get the trouser. We don't have time to explain. I was like, whoa, 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 easy there, lady. You can't just walk in here because you were here to steal shit. You literally just saw the kid, and you didn't expect it, and now you're just in a second you're just going to be like, nobody's here, we got to take him and blah blah blah, and we don't have time, so we gotta put the cloth on his head.
Yeah,
And
knock him
she
out.
says, yes, she says, get the trouser. That's the thing that she's calling. That's a fucking I'm sorry for saying so much fucking, but that's the weapon that they're using on this child. And I was like, oh my goodness.
That's like we're in a universe where they have now brothels and stuff. You don't want something
Right.
called the drowser being
Yes,
readily
exactly.
available. You don't want to
Yes.
go to any club after that.
Yes, exactly. And I was just gonna ask, like, why do they even have the drowser? But I guess you can they to drowse the enemies, like the
Call it
guards or whatever.
something else. The Z41.
Yes,
You know.
right. But yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it also
And,
it stuck out more.
and we can tell. We can tell that the kid is being knocked out by gas. You don't have
Yeah.
to call it a drowser. That sounds so
Wikipedia needs a
predatory.
name for it.
Yes, exactly.
I think it stuck out even more because the other guy was mentioning that, like, what are you doing? Like, I don't think we should be doing this. It's literally kidnapping.
Yes,
And she's
yes.
like, shut up.
Shut up,
Drug
get
the
me
kid.
trouser.
Let's get out.
I'm taking the child with me. And it's like, whoa, lady, we just came here for some gas tanks, because that's what you see them exiting with. A BYOB's got like some kind of those tanks. And it's like, okay, you were there to steal that shit. And now she's carrying this child in her arms that she just drugged without his, what's it called? Without his
Permission.
approval.
Yeah.
Or permission. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, that was very weird. But we're not. I don't think we're at her. Did she just says, get the trouser, and I'm gonna do this, and then we just and then we cut to the blues. So I'm gonna refer to them as the blues now. Okay,
Okay.
the corporals, because that's
Is
what
it
the construction worker.
corporals or corpos?
I was calling them corporals.
I think it's
Corporal.
corpo because of the corporation.
Uh,
And it's kind of like a
oh,
Blade Runner.
carpal tunnel syndrome. Is that what we're having right now? Yeah, but I'm just gonna call them the blues now.
Okay.
Not the blues. I'm gonna call them blues.
The
The
Blues
Blues sounds
Brothers.
The Blues Brothers. That's what they are. Malkin's Karn. Or, for now, we're gonna call him Cyril, and then when he becomes a villain, we're gonna call him Karn. That's gonna be our villain arc for him.
They were Elwood and Sherwood on the mission
Yes.
from God.
Exactly. All right. So blues now they're entering
Sherwood? I feel
Cassian's
like
house.
his second name is not Sherwood. I watch Shoes Line and Food anyway. And I think, fucking guy on. Anyways, moving on.
Yes, moving on. Let's do it. So blues, they're now walking. They walk down and they ring the doorbell, and it's Marva. and they're like, "Hey, we have a warrant for Cassian's arrest." And she's like, "Hey, you can't just come here." And he's like, "Shut her up!" And they just walk in, and they just start searching the place, and and then you see Bix. She enters her workplace where she comes in to start the computers and stuff, and she's telling a boy Timmy. Uh, Timmy makes that comes back and she's like, "Hey, I thought you were gonna clear out all that stuff. Remember after we had sex without pants on? You said you were gonna go clear out some the things from the front that you were gonna do me as a favor, and you didn't." And he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot." But we know what he was up to. Really, he was getting drunk and calling the cops on Cassian. And so he walks by and you see Bix like kind of being suspicious of of Timmy. You know, hey, no, I don't think he's right. And then you see like the Blues are like I can't stop thinking of Blues Brothers.
Call
Corporals.
the
I'm
Blues
gonna switch
Brothers.
it back to Corporals. I want to switch it back to Corporals.
Will we sit on as a corporals or corporals? Because
I'll
corporal
switch it
isn't
back.
that an army
I'll
thing?
go back and I'll go back and forth from Corporals and
Because isn't a
Corporals.
corporal a position in the army?
Yeah, that's what I thought you were referring to them because they're
No,
like army people.
no. I think Bix in one of the last two episodes called them the damn corporals. Which, like in cyberpunk worlds, you often use that. In the game Cyberpunk, for example, there are corporals. Maybe that's
So
why
it's
I'm
like
thinking it. That's why I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct because maybe I just had it on my mind because it's cyberpunk. But
well, we're not correct about any of it, so it's fine.
let's just stick with the blues.
This is the Blues, or it actually sounds better now. Now that I think of it, it actually sounds they feel a lot less threatening and less intimidating. You just
Right?
call them the Blues.
It also makes them
That's true.
sound more like the police.
Right, exactly. It's a lot more relatable to understand. So yeah, so Blues are searching the whole place. They're like flipping up mattresses and Marva's just like Marva's standing there. She's standing there. Hey, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. And Cyril just goes, somebody shut her up. And I was like, whoa, shoot, Cyril, what's up with you? And you see some guy like put it like he grabs her by the boot, and I was like, oh guys, chill out. Like you guys are taking this warrant thing too far. And then suddenly one guy comes in and tells Cyril, hey, we got another resident here. And he walks up and he finds our boy BYOB, and he's like, hey, do you know where Cassian is? And he just sort of does his little thing where he sort of shrinks back in a little bit. And then the dumbest thing starts happening where Cassian starts calling BYOB at that moment and is like, B, are you there, B?
Before that,
I
the
was like, why are you
saddest
doing
thing
this?
happened, and they're like, take out his battery thing or whatever.
Oh, yes,
And
yes, 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 yes. I had that.
and
I forgot.
and he's like actually I was thinking, oh no, he didn't charge enough that he can't lie. He doesn't have enough power to lie and protect
Oh,
Cass. And then
oh.
and then I was thinking, is it messed up that I had no reaction when they grabbed Marva, but the second they go for the little droid, I'm like, you take your hands off of him. You leave him alone. How dare you?
Yo, just 1 second. Okay?
Okay.
I just made like a loud noise. I'll check my house.
I heard it.
We're back. Sorry, guys.
Made me laugh because I thought it was in here.
Yeah. What was that? But yeah.
The
So
barking you're hearing is at Shabz, is it?
yeah, sorry. That's but yeah. But I had the same feelings. I forgot to mention that the moment like there's another resident and it's a droid, the Cyril's like fullest power supply, and I was like, oh no! And Marvel's like they can't do that. So it's like you realize that they're just like stepping out of bounds even within their own rights as blues, which they shouldn't be. And yeah. Um,
Just like the fuzz.
and that's very interesting that you said about them like he doesn't have enough power charged to lie. That's funny. I didn't notice that. And so yeah, and
Then the dumb thing happened
and
where Cass
yes,
calls
yes.
in.
So the dumb thing happens where at literally right at that moment, Cass starts calling BYOB and he starts going, B, are you there? Can you hear me, B? And everyone just closes in on BYOB. And my question was like, why is it playing out loud? That was my first question.
I think it had happened before in Star Wars vaguely because
Okay,
I had a little thought about that too, but I think
right.
I think that's how comms work. Like I feel like other there's always the thing where someone has a comm in their hand,
Oh, right. It's
and
like
then
a
some
walkie-talkie, and the
yeah.
walkie-talkie will you
I
hear
think that's how they work.
right, because they refer to the thing that he's using. I was wondering what he was using to call BYOB, and Luthen later refers to it as a com something.
Like
So yeah, I've written it down once we get to that, but it was
in
called com. So,
Obi-Wan is a scene where exactly because of that he gets kind of noticed.
okay, okay, so that makes sense. It was just a question. I was like, wait, why is BYOB playing this out loud? Maybe he doesn't have enough power to.
It's the thing with Star Wars. We always have to remember it's like it's not like it is high tech, but they always grounded in old
Right,
tech that we know, and it's
right.
going by like
Cyberpunk.
world. But it takes a lot of like World War II and like that era kind of
Yeah,
inspirations in terms of like the technology they use. So there's a lot of
right,
things that are like it's out in space, but it's
right.
still a little bit analog or low tech because of where they are and like how I don't know. That it's
Even the
something that I
stormtroopers are same with reference.
yeah I think it's those things that make Star Wars so interesting because it's not just a sterile future tech. It's always it feels tangible. I guess is a way
Right,
to call it.
right,
Like it feels in a way relatable.
mm, right. I agree. So yeah, okay. So that's good. I was wondering why that was. And and yeah, so it starts playing loudly, and everyone hears him, and then Mosk is able to locate Cassian's location, I guess.
They basically
And
triangulate the signal where it's coming from.
finally, the signal, yeah, exactly. He traced the call, and they figure out, and then he starts seeing out the window of Cassian's house that they're drawing a crowd, right? The townspeople are all like starting to crowd outside the house. And now we see Cassian finally meeting Luthen for the first time in that big thing, in that big warehouse. And and then you cut back to the Blues walking outside in the thing, and all the townspeople are like super angry. They're crowding them. They're like, "Hey, how can you arrest?" She said she's just an old lady, and Mosk is just like, "Hey, no, it's fine. It's just for a warrant. Like, we're just doing regular business." And he's like pushing through the crowd, and pushing through the crowd, and they're on their way to Cass's location. And while they're doing that, there's like a little kid, not a little kid, but like a kid who notices this, and he notices, and he just goes off running somewhere. So we're like, oh, okay, we're gonna see what's gonna happen there. And then and now we come back to Cass and Luthen. They're like negotiating with each other. He's like, hey, we want 40,000 credits. And then I get to finally understand what the device is that he's trying to sell to Luthen. And he's explaining that the device is an untraceable star path unit. He's like, Luthen's like, hey, come on, 40,000 is like sort of too much. And he's like, Cassian is not sort of explaining it, but he's justifying the price for it by explaining what the device is, which I wanted to point out why, because again, like there is very little exposition in any of this, in any of the episodes, and all the important information is always like doled out naturally in conversation form, rather than having a scene like, hey, I'm going to sell this, which is this, because what it is actually very important.
Yeah, it's
It
actually
is.
quite a deep cut from extended Star Wars lore.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Do you know what it is?
it's basically, if I understand it correctly, it's what the Imperials use to give each other guidance. It's a map which has coordinates and secret, like yeah, secret coordinates for their plans on what they're doing, as far as I
Okay.
understand.
So no. It's not that,
Okay,
but
what?
you're kind of close in terms of what it is. He explains it as an untraceable star path unit, vector crystals sealed intact, a seal still intact. You can track every imperial coordinate for 9 radial parsecs.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, okay. So
It's
I
more
guess
detail
you're
what I meant. What I was gonna say is also it reminded me a bit of, remember in I think episode 1 when Cyril goes to one of the other corporals and they have a device and there's a signal going,
yeah, yeah.
and I thought it was something close to that.
Hmm.
You know,
So this is basically you can Luthen would be able to track an imperial within imperial coordinate. Okay, so I guess it would be a map. We don't know much more of how it does that.
I mean, you're much more detailed and stuff. Like, I was
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
reinterpreting how I
I could.
understood it, but yeah, that's
Yeah. I
so.
just read straight from the subtitles. That's why I kept it on this time. I was like, oh, they're giving out a lot more information than I
The reason I
actually
called it a map
realized.
was I saw an image of what it's supposed to look like when it's in action, and
Mm,
it's like a holographic map with
right.
points on it that tell you where. I understood that like you can he's using it to track Imperials, but it's like a guided map. Like it tells
Right.
you the plans of the Imperials.
Right. Right. Okay. So
Whatever.
yes. So they're able so the device is very unique in terms of and how important it is. It's not just some random thing that's supposed to be expensive. And there's some good banter between them. And then Luthen is sort of asking like, "Oh, so can I come back if I'm dissatisfied? Are you sticking around?" Luthen sort of implying that he already knows that Cass is on the run and he's not going to be around for a while on Mordax.
An interesting part that happens there is he asked him, "How did you get it?" And he said he
No,
infiltrated.
that
Yeah.
that happens later.
Okay. I thought it was the same
Yeah,
conversation.
no, no, it's the same conversation, but I'm going scene by scene, so that happens in a
Okay.
later scene. Like so, after they have this banter about with Cass, like Luthen's implying that he knows Cass is not going to be sticking around here. It cuts to uh, the guy who in episode 1 helped Bix climb up that thing where she was doing the Morse code and she contacted Luthen. So same guy, comes in running to tell Bix that there's the Blues looking, and they were searching all over Cassian's house. And here's his name. You ready for this?
Oh, here we go.
Salman.
Salman.
Yeah, that's it. For what the hell? What?
What?
Why?
Okay. I guess
So strange. Right?
he, wa- he wasn't
It's
deserving
spelled
of a space
exactly
name.
like Salman. Yeah, Salman. Is it for diversity reasons?
Just to
Did they
make
not
sure.
like?
So make you
But
know that it's where he's from. You know?
and I made a note of the fact that he speaks in a British accent because I rewound to check that. So
Hmm.
he's like maybe like a Muslim slash British person, but
He's
he's in Star Wars,
he's a space Muslim. It's okay.
right? But he was born in London,
Yeah, I
and,
mean,
and
it's gonna get way worse with one of the Blues coming up, who like straight up sounds like a London cop.
yeah,
Not even a cop, just like a dude from London streets. Uh,
exactly.
like there's a
Just
couple
hired him
of
to be on this.
yeah, there's a couple of British accents in here where it's like that's almost too authentic. We're
Yeah,
used to having like an American person pretend to speak British, space British, but you guys just went to Britain and you got some real Brits.
right.
It stands out
Exactly.
next to the people
It's so
pretending.
it's like yeah. But and it's like people might call it nitpicking, but in a show where we keep harping on how good the details are, that sort of puts you on the thing where other details then start mattering as well. where you
Well,
might be able to look over it. I mean, I'm able to obviously look over it, and it doesn't really matter. And we're obviously joking around about a lot of it, but some of it does matter. Where it's like, it's so. Is this a weird choice to have these kind of names
maybe
so sporadically chosen?
yeah, the names are weird, but the accent wise, maybe what they're doing
And the
is
accent, sorry, yeah,
they made such a big point to explain Cassian's accent that
yeah,
maybe they're just like they had to start, which I had before too, is like how come some people speak British English and some people speak American English in
yeah,
Star Wars. It's never really
yeah,
explained. Where it's like they just treat it like those are different alien languages, but
yeah,
we never got really that. That's why it's sticking out. We never got that many dialects. Like we had
right,
specific British actors who just spoke a specific way, like old Obi-Wan, for example.
yeah, you're right.
But you know, like
And
why is Darth Vader speaking American and like I don't know.
right,
So maybe the showrunners just had that same thought, and like while they're creating new things, they're just like, okay, let's just have more accents. I don't know.
I think they just told the actors to speak in their native accent.
It seems like it. Although some of
Because
them are almost
the guy
like
named Salman, it looks like a more so Middle Eastern slash Asian person. Like he's brown skinned, but he speaks in a British accent, but he doesn't look like a white person like Cassian or Bix does. I mean,
me.
Bix also looks more Latina, but
Meanwhile, like Tim seems almost like too cockney to be like,
yes. And his name's Tim. It's the
yeah,
most boring name with two M's. That's even more boring than thinking that it's a Star Wars name. Like, hey, my name is Tim. Oh, okay, cool. My name is Tim with two M's. Oh my God, dude, what's wrong with you?
yeah.
Like, that's how
Imagine
I,
you're like,
like,
I'm going to be in Star Wars. I'm telling
yeah.
everybody I'm going to be in Star Wars, and you show up on the day and you get the script. It's like, all right, who am I
What's the
going to
name?
be? Darth who? Who am I like?
Am I
Plagueis
going to be
what?
Cyril Karn?
Yeah,
Am I going to be Linus Mosk?
yeah.
No,
What? Tim? I
Tim.
spelled it wrong. What the fuck?
Yeah. And my girlfriend's name is Bix with an X. Why do I get Tim? What's going on, guys? Why is that dude at the train station named Zanwan with
Yeah.
an X and a W? Like, why couldn't I get a name like that?
Can you
And
give me
that
two
dude's name is
T's
Salman?
instead?
What's
Can
going on?
can I get like
Yeah,
another
why couldn't
vowel?
you? Yeah, exactly. Why couldn't you spell it like Tymn? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like time, you know? Why do you have to make like such an emphasis on Tim?
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Salman is a very good name. I have friends named Salman. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, is this weird that it's spelled exactly like a regular Salman name? It's not. There's no two L's or two like it's not spelled with a C or two
It's
M's at the end. I guess.
maybe they're worried that like if they spell it wrong, people will call
Yeah,
them out
that's
for
the
it.
thing. So that's my thing where it's like, yeah,
Like no one
where
cares
the
about
what
Tim, but
right?
Salman, you don't know
Salman.
who's gonna give you an email after that.
That's my that was the questions that I started thinking like were the writers thinking of it from that point of view rather than just coming up with random Star Wars guys names. Yeah, but
It's
anyway,
they
that's a
should have
discussion for
just they should have just like stayed away from it, like you said. Give him a crazy
that's
name.
what just give him a crazy name or like don't and my thing is not just with someone it's also with Tim. Like you could spell it like Tymm or something like that if you're gonna spell it weird. Like nobody cares. People expect these Bix Bix Marva, Maarva. These are all weird names. You can
Yeah,
have weird names. Clem is a weird name. Cyril
Khan.
Karn is a weird name. Linus Mosk, he sounds like very much like Linus sounds like a regular
Linus
British
Tech
guy's
Tips.
name. Like yeah, exactly. But the point is like just to I don't know. Is this and then after all that to have a guy named Salman with just everything normal and he looks like a Salman. He just looks like a Salman that was born in England. That's it. And yeah. And okay, so now and the kid who warned Salman and Salman went and warned Biggs. The kid's name is Wilmon. Wilmon. So it's not like Wilbon, it's Wilmon.
Okay.
And then Salman says this is I and this was very important because again, it's a very important name that they take. They say, or he says, "What in the name of Chob has he done now?" Chobb. So I don't know anything about Star Wars, and my first thing was, why would they say "What in the name of Chob" when the regular phrase is like "What in the name of God"? Right? Are they referring as that Chob was someone was maybe like their God or a Jesus type figure?
You're putting me on the spot because I should know this, but there's basically it's similar to in Star Wars. The reason it stuck out so much that someone said shit in Star Wars was because they have their own swear words, and there's like a couple that like they will they popped up in the originals, and then in Mandalorian someone will use them. Obi-Wan just drops it randomly. There's a couple, one very specific one, and I assume that this is something similar where they're just like maybe
What
they're
in the
just
name of fuck?
yeah, like it's just like they have a similar saying, and just this time, they just the only thing they changed was like one word, but like they have swear words and other things where like they're trying to make it like their own colloquial way of speaking, and these are like their little things. I would assume that's where it comes from. Maybe it's probably a reference. It could be something new, but this one,
Because the
the
reason, yeah, sorry.
yeah, sorry, but the deep cuts are just very deep in this, and there's a lot of new stuff. So it's like, okay, really need to be on my toes to be like, did I hear this before?
The reason, like the first thing it made me think of was when this a phrase like this is used like in an ironic manner was like in South Park where Cartman is in the 500 years in the future and there's no God, there's no religion, and everyone believes in science, and they make sure to make a statement where the guy goes, "What in the name of science is going on?" as like a joke on what in the name of God or what in the name of Jesus. So that's why I was like, are they like referring like a God type figure that
Yeah,
whose name was Chob?
could be. We don't know.
And I
I
can think
mean,
of it from the swear word point of view, where it kind of makes sense, where people do say what in the name of fuck is going on.
but it's like it, there's definitely. I don't know if you can call it religions, but for example, Rogue One really touched into people believing in the Force, kind of like a religion,
Right.
with the blind
And
guy.
they call Jedi's and Force religion in all the first now in the original trilogy.
Yeah, so there you go. Like it just enriches again the world. It shows that
Right.
it's a whole galaxy. It's not
Right.
like everybody's from the same planet.
All right. Moving on. It's a funny thing. I just noticed that in my notes I wrote, "Who is Chob?" Question mark Jesus question mark, and I didn't notice this, but my phone autocorrected Chob to Chub, Chub. It just says, "Who is Chub?" Jesus. I should probably check that out. It's a funny thing. I just noticed. I didn't realize it while I was typing. Okay, so uh, so when someone's like, "Who in the job could have has he done?" He's referring to Cassian, like, "Oh my God, why are there no clues after him?" And Bix is like, "Oh my God, I gotta go find him." And then all of a sudden, Timmy comes in and stops Bix, and he's like, "Hey, Bix, he can take care of himself." And she's like, "Who? Who are you talking about? Did you do something?" And she starts like getting all like aggro at him and like, "Yo, what did you say?" And then she puts him on the spot where she's like, "Did I ever tell you about Canary? Did I ever tell you that Cass was born on Canary?" And he's like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Well, I do because I did tell you." And it goes back to when Marva was asking Cassian, "Who did you tell about Canary?" And in turn, Cassian starts grilling her. Whereas now you clearly know that Cassian has told Bix in the past, and Bix has now told Timmy in the past at some point that Cassian was born on Canary, and that's how um, Timmy knew who exactly they're talking about when he's because in the beginning there was no facial wanted photo. It was just like looking for a person from Canary, and Timmy knew exactly who they're talking about, and that's how he was able to like before anyone else even knew to. So and then Vix is just like, oh my god, how could you do this? You know, and she just sort of pushes him aside and runs off. And yeah, and then we come back to um, Luthen's now is the scene where Luthen's asking him, how did you even try, how did you even steal to get to like steal something like this? And he mentioned he's like, I know you guys bribe quartermasters to steal shit, but they would, but even they would never let you take something like this. And how it was like sealed. Now I have some lines that are actually like actual lines from the show. So like not now, but like from now in the recap. Some of the lines are very important, so I've just written them as they were. And it's talking about like how it was sealed on the Imperial Naval Base in the Steer Guard, and and Luthen already knows everything about the device, where it was supposed to be, and he offers an extra 1,000 to get to ask how it was stolen, and then you get to hear the cool stuff about Cassian explaining how easy it is to actually steal from the Empire. He's like, all you need is a uniform, some dirty hands, an Imperial toolkit. He's like, they're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't even imagine it. They can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear. And this was the moment where I made a note about like how this is like great world building, like where now we're starting to understand so much more about other, like the whole status quo around Cassian and the corporals and all these people.
Also, what it does, it gives an explanation to every single time in every Star Wars property when somebody infiltrates an Imperial base. How is it so
Yes,
goddamn easy?
yes,
And they finally are
and
like, this is why. It's brilliant.
exactly, yes. There is an actual thematic reason, and not just like a, oh, it's just so easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has a very like important reason that's like embedded in like society and actual problems in the
Yeah.
world,
It's something you'll think
and
about next time you see
problems.
someone
Yes,
do it. Yeah.
exactly, and problems that are based on a character level, not just like on a story level, where it's like now you understand the kind of people you relate, you understand, you because you can relate a lot more to a society like this in terms of how you perceive it. So now you understand the characters, like even it goes back to the Cyril's commanding officer, and he was like this fat guy, you know. I don't mean to body shame, they said fat, but he was a fat guy, just like sitting, and he was just like, yeah, whatever, like, you know, it's two dirty cops, and like, you know, and that's just how they are. They're just like, whatever, I don't care about any of this. I'm just gonna go to my meeting.
But so I ask you this because I had this question. Do you think he's telling the truth? Because didn't we see him get it from a scrapyard? And I think he
Yeah,
just could what Luthen said at first, that like they would never let you go away from that carrying this, is what actually happened, and it's because he knows the guy, and they're homies, and that's why he got away
right,
with it. But it just shows that like Luthen actually knew pretty much what happened, but Cassian
right.
decided to instead make up this entire story, and
I
Luthen
agree.
believes this.
I don't know if he believes this story.
The way they
I
shoot
hope.
out, it seems like he does. His reaction is very much like, "Shit, okay," like you have a
Oh
point.
yeah, because the next point is Luton going on like piggybacking off of what Cassian has said about these guys
Yeah.
onto how he. So now we get to more understand more about Luton, where he starts talking about, he's like, they can't imagine. Oh no, no, sorry, Cassian said that, and Luton talks about their arrogance, and that he's, and he mentions, and he says they can't imagine people like us. So that's the first time, because Luton we've seen as like this guy with like a trench coat, and like, you know, you get to know that he's not from the same town, and he's probably more well off because he's here to buy shit that costs so much more, and Luton's already showed like money to Cassian,
And
but
now
then when he says
Cassidy gives
us,
them 1,000 more.
yeah, exactly. So the fact that this is the first time he's jumbled all both of them together. Even Cassian's like, "What do you mean us? What are you talking about?" And then Luthen starts first mentioning that he's like, I know you, and he starts actually talking, and then he starts talking about his hatred for the empire, and 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 then he starts going on about like, oh no, like they're always telling you what to do, what not to do, when to move, and then he mentions uh soon the Imperials will know about them, as in Cassian and all these guys, which I noted was like he's foreshadowing a rebellion. That
Stellan
that
Skarsgård is
that
so good in this.
He's so good. He's so good. I forgot to mention that whole scene of both of them just bantering with each other and then coming to this like real human level of like their both shared hatred of the Imperial
The
and
energy changes so beautifully from like when it starts and he's the stranger, and then already when he's like asking questions and makes you want to ask questions about him, and then
right,
the flip of like Cassian just said the exact right thing that like made Luthen just be like, yeah, are the guy I'm looking for.
right,
Like
right.
like it becomes clear and clear that like he is here for him. Like as it's
Yeah,
going on,
I'm
you're starting
I'm
to
I'm
realize
gonna get
that,
to that.
no, I know, but like from the beginning,
Right.
as the
Oh, right,
conversation
right,
goes
right.
on,
Yeah,
before it's
right,
even made clear, you're starting to
right.
realize that like, no, this guy doesn't really care about the box. He's way more interested
Mm.
in how he got the box and who's this guy. Like
Mm.
all of that is way more important to the guy, and that's why like Stan Starsky plays it so beautifully when he's
Yeah,
doing it like that. You can tell so that like he looks at the box and he acknowledges how hard it is to get the box, how important it is.
right,
But what really like where you see him really put his energy into was just like, so how'd you get it? Who are
right.
you? And like why? How were you able to do this? And yeah,
And I think he was
so good.
also like checking him on like a character level, where
Yeah,
does he
he
really
was testing him.
have that kind of emotion and passion? Because if he wants to get him for something, he wants to have that sort of shared connection and shared hatred of the Imperial and the Empire to fight back. He's not going
But
to need someone who doesn't want to do this.
But I think it's even beyond that because he says, like, the way he explained getting the thing made sense in his head, where it also seems like this guy is smart. He's able to do something so crazy, which I'm sure
Right,
not anybody just goes onto a base, infiltrates it by like disguising themselves and grab something. Like, yeah, it happens in Star Wars all the time, but for just some guy in a junkyard to do
right,
something like that, I think it was both where like yes, this guy hates it, the Imperials, but also this guy, like he's the real deal. Wait, like
right,
probably like you have to like work backwards. Maybe they'll show it, but it's like you have to think like Luthen probably. It seems like he's probably part of the rebellion, and he must have
yeah,
seen that like somewhere on the market someone is selling this thing, and the only reason, well, there's probably two reasons that he can use it, but the second he saw it, he's like, who the hell was able to get that thing? Because we've been trying to get this for so long.
right,
Like, we need someone. Like, our guys weren't able to get this, but this random dude suddenly has it. You know,
yeah,
like, we need the thing, but we also need the guy because it only works this far. We probably need more of them. We need someone who can, like, yeah, it's great of like it gets you so much like invested into who Stellan
yeah,
Skarsgård is and Luthen, and again it all just comes out of a conversation between two guys and how the energies are shifting and like who's taking control of the conversation, and yeah, so
right.
good, really good.
I agree. And a quick thing that I forgot to mention was that I think when Cassian starts talking about like it's so easy to steal from them, all you need is this, this, and this. I think that's a reference to like a couple of things. The first thing was like I think in the first movie in Star Wars, Force, no, Force, sorry, A New Hope, sorry,
Yeah,
where Han Solo and Chewbacca just like steal the stormtrooper's uniform and then
yeah,
go in and steal their
yeah, that's what I meant,
walkie-talkies.
that like it happens
Yeah,
in every
yeah,
Star Wars property at least once.
right,
Everybody has done it in the new
yeah,
ones, in the old ones, in the middle ones, in the shows. There's
right,
always somebody infiltrating, and every time it's way too easy. You know,
right.
it's like
I agree.
it's like I have a bad feeling about this. It's like it
Mm.
lets you know you're
Oh
watching Star
yeah,
Wars. Yeah.
yeah. Right. So yeah, and then and here's where the part comes where we need to know whether he found Cassian uh, because he had the device that they were looking for, or he knew of Cassian and the device was a way for him to get to Cassian. Like in terms of like, okay, like we have now a way to. So because uh, Cassian's like, dude, what you're gonna get caught with that device in your hand. What's gonna happen? And then Luthen starts saying some really dark shit about the Empire, and he's like, "Oh, you're right. They'll hang me right in the middle of the square." And then he says something which was like a big reveal, and he says, "Just like they did with your father, right?" And Cassian, and I was like, "Oh shit, wait, what?" Like I thought he died in a mining operation in Canard.
Pretty dark for Star Wars.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, is he just straight up just like, yeah, they'll just hang me in the middle of the square. I was like, oh. He's like, that's what they didn't that do that to your father? And I was like,
It's on the level of the cop dying in episode one from a headbutt to
yeah,
the back, where it's just like,
yeah,
this is like, yeah, death is fucked up and real, you know.
yeah. And yeah. So right at that moment, Cassian just like immediately pulls out his gun and he's like, who are you? And this is this, and he's just shouting at him. And Newton mentions that he came looking for something more than just the device. And he said I could leave here just with the device, but I came here looking for something more, and I think I found it. And he tells Cass to like come with him, and and tells Cass like, like you staying here would be like a waste of talent. And then Cass is like, but why me? Like, what are we gonna do? And then he says the line, "Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?" So you know that Luthen is part of uh, a rebellion, and he's trying to now recruit Cassian to be a part of that. So, yep,
Yeah.
we're good. And now starts the beginning of the best sequence in all the three episodes, where some suspenseful music starts like slowly, and you see like Mosk and Cyril walking inside the thing, and automatically, like simultaneously, you see Salman. He starts banging on like a metal thing, and the moment he starts thinking, what I like is visually how they showed it was like Salman is banging on the thing, and then you see a guy a little in the distance. He starts hearing the clanking first, like in the distance, and then he goes to this and he starts clanking, and slowly by slowly, uh, yes, slowly by slowly, it just starts like everyone. It's like the wave or like a chain where everyone just starts rushing to places and they all just start slowly by slowly banging, and it builds up to like a super loud clanking where you already know where it's like already a known thing in the town that they already have this full signal that they've developed between each other.
It connects back to our favorite guy, the Hammer Bro, where
Hammer bro, exactly.
it's still like it's part of the
Yes,
culture of this town or this planet. We
right.
don't probably the we don't know of this community where like
I think it's just the town.
yeah, I think so too.
I think it's just like one of those like shady towns with heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, where everyone's down on their luck, but they're trying their hardest, and it's
And
like a
it makes it feel like
rusty old construction town,
a culture. Yeah.
right? And everybody, it's like almost said it's like a very dark version of South Park, where it's like where everybody knows each other, and it's like uh, the people are all they all are interconnected, and
So a small town.
small town, small town. Let's go with that.
Where I grew
My
up, that
only,
was
I
like
guess, my only experience.
if I go back to where I grew up, there's 20,000 people. Like they still like I'm one of the few brown guys, so they're like, hey, if
Hey,
you're not that
it's
guy, you're not
Salman.
this
It's
girl, you
Salman.
have to be that guy. So, I can
It's
be gone
Salman.
for 10
Salman's back.
years. I go back and there's people still stopping and they're like, oh, it's you. So like it's small town vibes. You
Do they refer to you as Salman?
know? No.
Alright, so yeah, and you also see a quick shot of Zanwat closing his shop where everyone just starts like closing everything and they just start banging on this stuff. And then suddenly you hear Cass and Luthen in the warehouse. They start hearing the banging. And and you come back to like Cyril asking Musk like what's going on, and you see him like getting like a little bit like frantic, and Musk is like intimidation, sir, bluff and buster, and and you see everyone closing up shop, and Cass questions. Cass is like he starts questioning Luthen that maybe you're an Imperial spy, and Luthen is like the special people are hard to find. That's why I'm here, and shows that Cass is like like for us the viewers now we get like that Cass is not just like some random kind of person who's like stealing things just to get by, but he's like actually like a talented thief.
Yeah. But then now the question
And
is like, do they know more about him, or is it really just because he got this device? And then
exactly.
did he lie about how he got the device? And now they're recruiting him because they think he broke into a base, but actually all he did is went to a scrapyard and told his homie like, "Yo,
Mm,
don't tell anybody about this."
mm. And maybe now he might be put in a situation that might be too much for him, just like Cyril.
Hmm.
Mm, I like that. And now, so uh, Luton. Okay, so yeah, so it's called the comm link that Cass uses to communicate with BYOB, and all of a sudden, Luton's like, do you have a comm link with you? Because Luton checks he has a device that starts beeping, and he looks and it starts going full beeps. He's like, oh my god, do you have a comm link with you? And Cass is like, yeah. He's like, throw it to me, and he throws it and he smashes it, and and then he suddenly goes, rule number one, never carry anything you don't control. So you're like, oh, the training has begun.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, all right, we're getting and here's the funny bit where if I don't know if people would remember, but the first time I watched it, I was under the impression that this is Boba Fett, the older Boba Fett, and so when this started happening, I was like, oh, okay, that's why he needs to be Boba Fett because he's already a bounty hunter and he knows all the rules and he's going to train Cassian. I was like, this makes complete sense why he's, because I was questioning why it's Boba Fett. And I was like, oh, okay, now it makes complete sense why he's Boba Fett. He's going to train Cassian. And as an experienced hunter himself, bounty hunter, he'll be the perfect guy. And I was completely wrong about that, but it's still really cool. It's this training thing. But yeah, so they figure out that they're surrounded on the outside. Everyone's the North team is there, and one of the team catches Bix, and he's like, "Oh, girl, that's the guy I think you're referring to as the super British dude." And it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Where are you running off to, girl? You shouldn't be," or something like that. And he sort of catches her, and he's like, "You're not running home, are you?" Something like that.
Is
And then
that
he
your
catches
British
her, and he
accent?
that's my British accent because I can't remember if he was actually British or not. That's the problem.
If it's
I'm just
if it's the black cop, David, it's right before I think where we're getting to,
oh
and
right, okay.
it's the bigger one who's like, "Yo, let her go" or something. Like,
Right. And so yeah, so they catch Bix and they sort of handcuff her to the thing in an alleyway, and the team that has Cass and Luthen surrounded, they communicate Mosk, and they're like, hey, should we go in because we have them? And Mosk is like, no, wait for us. And sorry, um, yeah, Moss is like, yo, just wait for us. We're gonna come to you. Don't engage yet. And then all of a sudden, Luthen's like, he mentioned that he's got like the entrance doors. He's put like some bombs on it, and he goes, rule number two, build your exit on your way in, and he blows up the doors with, and then like because Luthen first is like, okay, I put the bombs on. Cass like, when did you do that? And then Luthen's like, rule number 2, build your exit on your way in. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, one by one, we're gonna see how Cass becomes even more experienced on this. And he blows up the door, and then starts the real action shit where those huge engines that are by the chain, but well, one starts falling, and then you automatically see yeah, he blows up the door, all the shit starts falling from the ceiling, and then Luthen wants to leave right away, but Cass is like, yo, the box is right there, the device, we left it. I want to go get it. Luthen's like, dude, are you, I thought you were smart. What's wrong with you? And he really says that. And he's like, no, 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 we can get it. We can get the box. And then the action begins. The blue stormtroopers start shooting with their lasers.
And the
And
whole time you still hear the banging, don't you?
oh yeah, the banging is still going on.
That's so much
That's gonna
tension.
come. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's just more and more chaos is starting once
Mhm.
like once Luther is like, you got a calm link, and it just keeps ramping up and going more,
Yeah.
where it's just also chaotic. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. That build of tension from when they're like yeah, once he discovers the comm link and he starts the banging, like right before he starts the banging, you hear like actual suspenseful music, like in within the show as a score.
No,
But then once he starts the banging, like slowly, it just starts ramping up to
yeah,
like
just
so
like
much here.
what's happening in the show, the music slowly picks up and gets more and more
Yeah,
until it's just full chaos.
exactly. And yeah, so and then all the engines are falling, and then this is important where uh one is falling on is about to crush Luthen, and Cass saves him. He pushes him out of the way and he saves him. And it's like, oh, okay, so I guess Cass believes him as well. This is the first good thing we've seen him do, I think, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, probably.
It's the first thing where he's actually helped someone.
True.
Otherwise, he's only put other people in deep shit. So I was like, wow, okay, good for you, Cass. And then so and then they sort of all these things are falling and they're shooting and Cass saves him and then they manage to get out of from like this tiny little vent or something. And then Biggs tries to escape and one of the corporals like gets her and he's like, hey, don't try to run, and he like sort of hits her head on the wall and she like starts like bleeding and she's like sort of like um sort of just kind of like injured and down. And and then you see the thing where Timmy is running down the alley and he sees all the corporals and he sees Bix handcuffed and like slouched with bleeding. And he's like, oh my god, who did this? And he's getting like super like, oh my god, I'm gonna be the hero. And he, and all of a sudden, and they're like, hey, stop, just let's not do anything stupid. And then what does Timmy do? He does something stupid, right? He immediately just tries to rush a full like team of cops with nothing in his hand. And he's just like, "What are you doing? She's bleeding." And they're like, "Hey, chill." And he just rushes, and he just gets shot by all of them.
This
And
escalated so quickly, so hard. Like I
yes,
did not
yeah,
expect it at all. Well, like now thinking back when you like recap it like that, I'm like, this is getting more and more such an allegory for just like cops in America and shit. Where like
yes,
I
yes,
didn't even realize it while watching it. Like it's
yeah,
like it's a bit actually on the nose, more than I
yes.
actually realized while watching the show. It's like everything else was a bit more subtle, but this is getting really like, all right,
It
okay.
was yeah.
Maybe that's
It
why they
was
made
a
him so hardcore British.
and
At
so
least the
and
guys who
so
shoot him.
so white. His name is Tim, guys. Okay, he's a white dude. Okay, don't confuse him with Salman, who's clearly a brown guy with another British accent, or Bix. He's Tim. And then
It
there's
was
Willie.
Tim.
He's the other white guy. He was Tim. And then Willie's still movie. And yeah, but the moment Tim comes, even the first time I watched it, I was like, oh my God, I know exactly how this scene is going to go. Actually, even before Tim got there, when the cop tries, like, smacks Bix's head on the wall, I was like, okay. Like the scene was from the first scene where Bix is telling Cass he would give his life for me. that I immediately reheard that line in my head. And then I saw Tim come down. I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen. They're going to say, he's going to be like, oh, what's up? And yeah. And it's exactly what happened. That was the one moment where I was like, that scene was created and that character was created just for Bix to have some guilt so that she uses that in a way to maybe fight for something greater. 100% that's going to happen, right? And I mean, we already saw half of that now.
True.
So that was the only thing where I was like, and all these really well set up characters, this was like straight up by the books where we just need to have this character and this storyline for this to happen
That's why they
in the
call them
most
10 with
obvious
two
manner.
M's. They're like,
Exactly.
don't even think
Don't
about
even
it too
think.
much.
What's the name?
Don't worry
Just
about this
call it
guy.
add a fucking M there.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And yeah. So and you see what's her name? Vix. Vix is like, oh my god, what did you do? And immediately, the black cop he goes to the guy who shot, and he was surprisingly, the black cop was like, "What's wrong with you? You know, give me your rifle right now." And he's like, "Wait, what happened?" And he's like, "You're going back to the pod." And I was like, "Oh, they're shouting us out." That's when I noticed that they call their ships the pod. And I was like,
You go back
Ryan
to
Silver.
podcast duty.
They go
You
back
all you do is get to do is report on what we've done. You don't get to
exactly.
be
You
out
don't
here.
get to have any. You don't get to have any rifles. And I think they made sure that it's the black cop. Now that we are talking about the black commentary, where it's the black cop reprimanding the white young cop for being too trigger friendly. And they made sure that it's a super white guy who does this thing. So they inverse everything.
That's it. You're going to Hello Fresh duty.
Exactly. But yeah, and he tells him, uh, and he's like, go back to the pod and keep it in the air and keep the radio on. That is important because this leads to another very dumb thing that happens. Well, not dumb thing that happens, but the guy is just really dumb doing it. Like when you see it, well, we'll get to that in a bit. And my God. Oh yeah, and then you see Bix is crying for Timmy, and then the black guy on his comm link goes, the black cop, sorry, goes air support en route. So he was telling that guy to get to the pod, keep your radio on, and he would call for reinforcements from AirPod, from his part. I'm getting my pods and my AirPods and my air support and everything is getting too much for me. I can't do this. I can't do the podcast anymore, dude. Oh my god. Yeah. Where was I? Yeah. And he's like, yo, so yeah, air support en route. I was AirPods again, and Musk, and he's like, we're still trying to. They got away. He says, and Musk is like, what do you mean they? There's two of them, and he goes, two humans. So even in Star Wars now we know that Luthen and Cassian are humans, right? I don't know if that's ever mentioned before in any of the Star Wars movies or anything, where they clearly refer to them because they said they've now mentioned dark skin. I think no, what
The
was that?
dark
I forgot.
features.
Dark features, and now we know that there because I know in New Hope Han Solo refers to I think um, Jabba the Hutt as you're a great human being. 'Cause I remember knowing that, and this was the first time where it's like, oh, I guess they refer to them as humans and maybe aliens. I don't know. I don't know what they would call
They don't be so racist.
veg, right?
They would call them
Humans and
whatever race
aliens.
he is. Usually they have races for
Ah,
these
right,
aliens.
right, right, right. So veg would be his own race,
Yeah.
like a Gungan or
Yeah,
that kind of
exactly.
thing, or a Wookiee.
Exactly.
Mm, okay. Well, I guess that clears up a lot of things. I wonder what they call. Okay, yeah, they could be different. I was thinking like more like humans, but just like the lady with the three tits, but she's not really
Is-
human. Is that racist? Is that
no,
species? That's not really human. That's not human. And yeah, so and then the Blues get into position, and Cyril. So the Blues have the Mask and Cyril. That team, uh, 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 like Mask is like shouting at the guy, like, "Why did you start engaging? Like, when I told you to wait." And they're like, "Oh no, but they started this," and that's when he gets to know that there's two of them. And now they've reached the location, and they start getting into position. And Cyril enters a home, and he just like starts shooting like to scare away any inhabitants, and you see like tiny little creatures like run away. And
was it
now
a
he's
home?
like
I
set
thought it
up.
was
uh,
like a shop, like not a shop, like kind of
like,
like
yeah,
what Cassian went to earlier, and the guy's like, "Have you ever heard of a
yeah,
canary?" And he's like, "This little
no, no,
guy
no, no.
never heard of it."
Yeah, yeah, it's like a but it had like one of those like door entrances
Yeah, like an
where
open door.
yeah, because the thing you're referring to had like a window, and like it was like a tree counter.
I saw it as like it was just the other side of that place, but
Or
I don't
like
know.
the backside of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that could
I
be
just thought it was
it
like
too.
the
But
same small guy who didn't know about the canary.
no, there was like two or three of them. There was like
Yeah,
different creatures. I think it was like called.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
it was
It
different because
doesn't
you
really
see those
matter.
creatures
I
later on
just
as well. Yeah. But yeah, he gets into like a enclosed place, and he's like getting into position, and uh, and then you see the Blues. So now you come back to Marva in the house, and the two Blues that are in the Blues brothers who are in the Marva, who are in the house like watching Marva. Now Marva starts explaining. Like you see the Blues like getting like scared of all the banging,
which has
and
been
then
going
Marva says,
continuously as everything has been
"Yes,
happening.
yes, yes." This whole time since when we started talking about it till now, it's been just ramped up, and it's been going on this whole time. And then Marva says, "That's what a reckoning sounds like." And I didn't realize this, but the episode 3 is called Reckoning.
Okay.
I didn't even realize that episode 1 and 2 had names, which we didn't reference, but it's a good thing to know that episode
Yeah,
3 is called Reckoning. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and then they see, they start showing like different scenes where everyone's in position and stuff, where all the echoing is and the clanking is echoing, and uh, and then she says, "You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming." And all of a sudden, you see Moss sipping out of a flask while he's on the roof with his rifle, and all and then she says, "It's when it stops that's when you'll really want to start to fret." And then the pattern clanking like just starts building tension, and all Blues are in position, and Cyril kind of starts looking scared, and then the clanking stops, and it's just super quiet. And the Blues, like the two guys who are in Marva's house, because they're like, "Wait, what happens when it stops? What happens when it stops?" And she just like starts, and all this stuff happens, and then it stops. And it's just quiet, and then those two guys exit the house just to
Didn't
like go see like what's happening.
it didn't seem by
Yeah,
the book. Wasn't very much by it. Seemed like protocol, where they're like, the sound has stopped. Let's both of
yeah,
us leave
exactly.
our position, leave this old lady alone, and just run out there.
Well,
When she just told us we should fear the moment the clanging stops, we should go out in the open and,
yeah,
you know, leave our enclosed place where we're taking
exactly.
care of maybe fugitive and informant. We don't know. We have to like we have an order that we're
Maybe
going to
I
ignore
think
now
it just
because the
looked
old
like
lady said something.
they're like dumb. They're
Yeah,
just like dumb
she
cops
got
who
to them.
not
That
cops.
that's what she was trying to do, right? That's what she was saying all of that.
Yeah,
She's just trying to like put fear into them.
right. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, because this showed them like looking scared, and then like like, hey, what's gonna happen when it stops? When it stops, and I guess they just got scared and like just act irrationally, where they're like, "Fuck this, we're getting out of here, and we're just gonna find better refuge," or like just like sometimes it's like when I hear a bang and I'm like, "Yo, I gotta check." what's up, you know?
That's what it's
Like,
looked like more. It's like, oh, we gotta
yeah,
go check what's going on out there.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. Maybe she got to them. Like, she got to me, man. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And yeah, and then the best scene, not the best scene, but like a very cool scene happens where um Cyril's in position, and then all of a sudden he gets a gun pulled on him, and you see that it's Cassian, and this is the first time our hero and our villain come face to face, baby.
And it's a
And
classic shot of like you see him,
yes,
and the
yeah,
gun just comes into frame.
yes, yeah. You know that it's gonna happen. Like, as we're seeing Cyril's face, you know a gun is gonna come from the back, and you see that it's Cassian, and he's like dropped the weapon, and then he goes, you got a comm link, and drop that. So he drops the comm and what's his name? Cassian smashes the comm, and he starts like asking him like, hey, how many how many of you are here? And this is when you see Cyril being the most like cowardly, and he just starts stammering like in fear, like blah, 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 blah. He starts doing this, and Luthen's just like kill him from the background, and he goes, and Cyril goes, no, 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 and he's like, how many of you are there? And then Luthen just goes, I'll kill him, and he goes, and Cyril automatically just goes 12. There's 12 of us. And now he goes 14 or like a dozen troops and two officers. And I was just like, oh my god, what a weakling! Like, you know, this is who he is really. Like in a second, like a soldier would never, you would fight back. The Cassian wouldn't do that. Forget a soldier. And he just immediately just like shrunk under the pressure in this first moment of like actual where he could have like maybe looked cool or something. He just completely shrunk under the pressure. And yeah, he just gives it all the information. And and then you see the guy who shooted Tim. He's running back frantically into the pod, and he's turning it on, and he takes off. And for some reason, there's like a chain. I don't know if that's the fuel line or I don't know what that was, but it got tangled up into some kind of huge
No, I think
machinery thing.
what I understood is that the town guys did that to the ship.
Oh, maybe. It would
Yeah,
have been nice to like maybe see like a quick scene of something.
I think it was implied because it was heavily. It didn't look like while landing you would get entangled like that. That was
Yeah,
intentionally like tied around them so that when he takes off, he smashes into the tower.
the thing is like when 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 you see the 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 thing, it almost looks like I thought maybe it's like being like fueled up or something like that. But I
Wasn't
was
it
like, well,
tied
why would?
around it?
But I didn't actually notice it. I thought maybe what happened was like it just got like caught up into it. But I guess you're right. Like I guess it was trying. I didn't notice it like that. I was just like, wait, what's going on? What is he doing? Like,
That's
why
basically what
is
was
he doing?
happening while they were banging. It
Right.
was a
And
distraction
because
so
he
that
was in
they can
such a
do this.
hurry,
Yeah.
right? And the dude was in such a hurry, and he was like so like, oh my god, like he didn't even check to notice something like that. He just took off, and then and yeah, so um he takes off, and you see this long, big, huge thing that sort of because it's super heavy, so it pulls the pod with him, and they smash into that big construction site that the guys were working at. And there's a huge explosion, and Mosk automatically just looks up, like, "Oh my god, what the fuck? Like, what happened?" And yeah, everyone's like, "Whoa, what's that? What's that? What's that?" And then one of the blues, they're walking into that same place, and they hear like gagging sounds, and they find what Cassian did to Cyril is he totally emasculated him, where Cyril is fully tied up and gagged with like a handkerchief. And it just shows like how what Cyril has now, like not just against these people, but against Cassian himself, who Cyril's I think biggest insecurity is feeling emasculated. I can tell from all these things where he wants to be super alpha all the time. But
It
like getting bested in this kind of a manner and then being tied up and your officers having to come rescue you, where it just completely uh blows all his fantasies about being like a cool badass.
basically
And
became personal.
exactly, this that's what I like, where it's not just like, oh, he's just hunting him down for this. Now it's like they have like he has a personal hatred for Cass himself and all the shit that Cass has put him through now. And and yeah, so once he gets free, there's like this speeder. So yeah, I forgot to mention where Luthen and Cassian, they get to a place where there's all these speeders, and Luthen's like, which one do you want? And so yeah, now we see like a speeder just take off, and you see all the blues just shooting at it. They keep shooting, and all of a sudden they manage to blow it up. And then you see the look on Cyril's face and Mosk's, and they're all super happy. And they're looking at each other like, was that them? Was that them? Like, did we get him? And they're like, it had to be them, right? And then as they're going close, the speeder blows up, and along with him, the whole team that was around the speeder. And all of us stand next to you, like, oh my God, what the hell?
I think the
And
speeder
the more,
flipped upside down, and you couldn't. They were trying to see if anyone's in there as they're
yeah,
getting
yeah,
closer. It just
yeah,
blows
they
up.
were trying to check.
Yeah, blowed up.
And then you realize, oh, it was a decoy speedster because the Cassian and Luthen escaped from behind them on a speed bike, something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad that they set up the whole explosive things early, right? So now it's like we know that Luthen is capable of doing this, where he sent a decoy thing, and yeah, I really like that like way of setting the small detail and having it pay off like this. Even though it wasn't like in the beginning of the episode or something, but it was still like a nice little detail. And yeah, and you just see Cyril's face just he just gets super angry, and I was like, oh boy, okay, our villain is now set up, man.
Great
Like
shot of
you,
him looking at the wreck and all
mm,
the dead colleagues, soldiers,
yes,
security men.
yes, because he started off from trying to just defend the honor of two bad cops who was murdered, and now because of this whole task force team that he was told not to put together, because of him, all these 6, 7 people are now blowed up.
What I got from it as well was he was not ready for this, for real
Yeah,
action,
yes,
like where actual like lives are on the line. And it goes kind of from the shock of what he's seeing to him getting angry, and it's an amazing shot.
yeah, I agree. The facial expressions from like he's like looking around and he's like, oh my god, like this is like a real life
No,
fucking war, like battle, you know.
it just got real
And
for him, basically.
and then you see the anger come on his face. And it's like, oh my god! Now I really hate that guy. You know,
It's even
first he
more
was just like
personal.
yeah, first he was just some unknown guy that I wanted to hunt down. Then he made me look like a bee. You know,
Mm.
and now he's done this to me, and he's made me look like a fool as well. Where we all fell for the decoy thing, and all these men are blowed up because of me. And yeah, you're like, oh, our villain is now set up, right? His entire character arc, like his origin story of
His
his
motivation is
relationship with
set.
Cassian. Yeah, his motivation, exactly. That's the word. And yeah, and then you see scenes of cutting back and forth of a lot of parallel going on now, where where Cass is now escaping as an adult with Luthen on the bike, and to him being helped by Marva as a child, and and then you get the really emotional scene of her just sitting in the home with BYOB just crying like just a tear, and that one really got me in the feels like and morally because like I get it, you know.
Yeah, what I was getting from it also was the fact that he's leaving his life behind again. The same as
Exactly.
a kid. It's like
Yeah.
they're setting it up in a way like he cannot return.
Yeah.
That's how he has been acting also this whole episode. Like
Yeah.
this whatever his life was over here, he's understood that's over. That's why when Stellan Skarsgård shows up and says all those things, it's
Right.
actually the lifeline that he needed. He
Mm.
throws him the inflatable tube or whatever you call it. You know, the what do you call it? The anyways, you know what I mean.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
sending him. He's in the quicksand and like throws him the rope, and it's
I,
the one thing he needed in that situation, and it's
yeah.
yeah, great.
And also of like how the scenes of we're seeing when Marva first met Cassian to where most likely, or at least she thinks that she's not going to see him again, where she knows that now he's fleeing, or either maybe he's caught by the blues because she doesn't really know. And she has faith that he has fled, but she knows that, you know, like she's probably not going to see him. And those scenes of her finding him and then like not, yeah,
Yeah, it almost feels like she has expected this day to come for a long time, and it's finally here.
you're right, right. And yeah, and yeah, very well done. What I noticed one thing with like, and it wasn't like hit you over the head with manipulative emotions, where a lot of shows can do in a moment like this, where the music will be over the top emotional and the scene will be over the top emotional. This was like very dialed back, but because they've set up all the characters in the first two, now three episodes, where by the time this happens, you like really feel for her and you get everything that she's going through in this.
Same time, you get the feeling of like this adventure is about to start.
Yeah, I was yeah, yeah, exactly. Where it's like yeah, I'm just gonna make that point once we're fully done with the recap. Where what I felt about the ending and stuff like that. And yeah, so yeah, so then you see like Bix like looking distraught and she's getting untied by Salman and she's about to go hug Tim and Salman. I just said Salman, right? Yeah. He's like, no, 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 we gotta get out of here quick, quick, quick. And she's like, oh no, Tim, you did this, and now can you like I have to now leave. And Salman, Bix, and Wilman, they like run away, and Cass's friend, the construction worker in the bar, he's got a look on his face like, man, oh man, like, all this stuff is going on. And then you see Mosk like literally shouting at Cyril, like, "Hey, we gotta get out of here. We gotta go." And Cyril is just like angry. And then Mosk literally, like, I was like surprised at the fact that Mosk literally grabs him by the collar and like pulls him with him.
They also show
And
it
I
in
was
a way
like,
like he's not even like hearing him, even though he's
yeah,
yelling.
exactly. But I was just a little taken aback from like how much leeway I guess Mosk knows he has with Cyril.
I think he
Like
was
Mosk,
figured he saving his life. You know, he's
right,
like, if we
right,
stay here, we're going to die.
right, right. And yeah, and then you see Cass get off the bike and he finally sees Luton's actual ship. And we're like, even I was like, whoa, man, that's a huge heavy duty ship. And you see like Cass is like super surprised by it. And then he keeps cutting back and forth from the ship with Marva's ship and Cass in the ship, like young Cass in the ship. And and then you see sort of the parallels that I was mentioning in the beginning of young Cass when he walks into the ship for the first time, and the way he's looking at all this and how we were talking about like a 6-year-old like seeing like a mall or some cool tech for the first time. You see that similar look on Cass's face right now when he's in Luton's ship and he's looking around, and you can see that, like how we described like his environment was like a reflection of himself, where now it's like he's going to go on this adventure of like he's gotten out of that poverty thing and now into
It makes it
and
clear
now
that
he's
he's going into a situation he has never been in, where like this is
yeah,
stuff that he's maybe
alien.
only heard
It's
about.
alien to him.
Yeah,
The whole ship is like alien to him, just like it was when he was home, like introduce young cast. And and yeah, and the last shot of where young cast there's the sun shining into the ship, and young cast sort of like he wakes up from his drowser. It's hard to forget that that happened. Yeah, he wakes up from his drowser, and you see uh, Marva looking back at him and smiling, and then it cuts back to current cast in Luton ship looking out thing, and I was like, and then it's with somber music. The episode ends, and that's
Episode three.
that. There you go. That was episode three.
An amazing start to a show as a whole, I would say,
Yeah.
personally. Where,
Yes.
like we were saying, episode two had me at first watching a little bit, not fully, like I was still trying to gauge it, was like how much am I going to like this? How good is it really? But then um episode three, as we mentioned a lot in our breakdown for episode two, it just the ways that it brought back things that were set up in episode two and episode three were great, where it was a lot
Right.
of just character building, where like they didn't have to do
Yeah.
callbacks. It was more about whatever was happening had such a bigger impact because of what we saw before, like Tim dying and everything else, where like the city had become its own character by that point. That when the banging happens and
Yeah.
everybody is all on edge, you're like, it keep you like you're engaged in that at that point because of what you've seen so far, the time you spent with everything over there.
Yeah.
And yeah, overall, I thought it was a great start. Well, after I saw this, which was a good like 20 minutes, this entire climax from when the
Yeah.
Blues land until they actually escape, which is like almost half of the episode, was a great
Yeah.
climax to overall somber start of the show, where
Mm.
it let me know that like, okay, when it does pop off like that, it can get really cool. Where
Right.
I feel like they showed me why it's worth investing the time into the slower segments and spending the time with the characters, because it's not only there's cool action, it's because the action gets amplified because of the time I've spent with everybody.
Mm.
And yeah, overall, I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm still curious to see how it goes by weekly, as single episodes, because this overall really did feel like an overall piece of. Uh, it was almost like a full movie,
Yeah.
although like ending with a big cliffhanger, but it had its setup, its middle part,
Yeah.
and its climax, just like a movie where
Exactly.
it hit the beats just the same way. It didn't do the TV thing where the first two episodes had to end on some really big high, with to get us hooked. I guess which I think is the benefit of dropping three episodes at once. So yes, it'll be really interesting now this week when we see episode four. How will we feel as a standalone? Will it be enough? Will it have a different impact? Also, are we going like it would be interesting to see now. Do we keep the energy? My prediction would be that we go back to a bit more somber. But
Mm.
yeah, what will be the overall structure? Will it be every three episodes we get a big blowout and then we get like four mini movies, or will it now be just whenever? You never know. Like I almost think that would be. Of course, I feel like it's highly doubtful that they would just repeat themselves and then you could just know every third episode is like the big climax and then shit
Mm.
changes. Um, actually, depending on how much they make us wait and how cool it is, I don't know. I'm okay with getting surprised and not knowing the next time something crazy happens. And so far, I'm
Right.
down for it. Again, it just depends. Am I okay with waiting 3-4 weeks until something like episode three happens again? Or will they
Mm.
make me wait that long? So yeah. But what do you think overall for episode three and the first three episodes as a whole? One more time, now that we've gone through the spoilers.
So the major thing for us to make sure was that we don't watch episode four before we reviewed episode three,
Yeah.
because a lot of what is our feelings on episode three is based on how we assume to be episode 4 in the future. So yeah, and episode 3 by itself, like amazing episode. Everything just the funny thing is, so I wanted to now mention the different perspectives on, because I watched all three at once first, and then I watched just episode 3. And when I finished watching it in all in one go, by the time I was done with it, I was like ramped up, but I was like, now I was like, okay, now let's go. I can't wait to watch episode 4. But I was also kind of like, I was like, oh my god, thank God we're done for some time, right? Because I was like, I need to take a break from having watched so much stuff and so much new stuff with so much detail in it. Where I was like, oh okay. And by episode 3, I almost wrote like, the pacing is starting to become maybe too tedious for me now, where I'm like, I don't know where this is going, because that's where we were in the beginning. Now, having watched just episode 3, I'm like, the pacing of this episode was so great, because I'm not looking at it anymore as a continuation from like having watched so much in just one go. Now it's just like, I'm like, things just kept getting ramped up, ramped up, ramped up, ramped up. And then once we were done with it, I was like, this almost feels like the end of season 1. Like that's what it should be. The way the story ends, the way the story was built up. And then it brought me to asking this question, is that, again, like, is it from a marketing standpoint that okay, what sounds better, that if a company is trying to sell you, as a viewer, what sounds better? Hey, here's 3 brand new episodes of this new show. Or, hey, here's a really long episode, and it's going to be episode 1, and it's going to set up everything.
I think what I don't know. We have to also think about how many people are going to see it week to week and tune in there, and who's going to later on see it as a whole big package, where then they can decide, do they want to binge to 3 4 episodes, or are they like okay with just doing one and then
So,
coming back
so
the
that yeah,
next day and yeah.
so that goes back to what you were mentioning, is that what is the structure going to be like now, where it's like it's like now the show is going to actually start, right? Assumingly, and or is it going to be like, oh, we just did 3 episodes of, because I thought the plot was he's looking for his sister, that's how the show starts. But now it's like the real plot is him getting entangled with all this and fleeing, and now joining Luthen.
Maybe,
And
but we don't know
we don't
because
know. That's the thing. Like like you said, like now that they did 3 episodes, like it should have just been 2 long episodes, in my opinion, because then you don't have all these questions of like, oh, we're gonna do 3 episodes and then 1 to 1. Where and I said that it took a long time to set up everything, but they used their time wisely. Where now when I look back at episode 2 after having watched this, I'm like, dude, that episode was perfect for what it was, because it set up so much character and so much like characterization, so much world building, so many character motivations become clear. Where it's like, without that episode, everything would feel rushed in this episode.
yeah, I agree.
So now, like you said, like it'll be very interesting to see where episode 4 takes us. And I actually wrote down that after having watched episode 3 as a singular episode, I actually would recommend watching it one episode at a time, because after finishing, like after just watching just one episode and taking in just that much information of what's happening and what's going on with the story and how the story progresses, when it ends, I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for episode 4. Whereas when I watched all 3 together, I was like, I'm looking forward to episode 4, but I wasn't like pumped. I was just like, oh my god, thank God, I'm like I need to take a break for a little bit, you know, where I'm like, is episode 4 going to be slow, or what's going to happen? But now I don't mind if they keep the story flowing at the same tempo as episode 3, and maybe have like one episode in the middle of the season as a character episode, like episode 2, where they just sort of deal with character stuff and not really the plot doesn't progress that much, and it's more of a slow burn.
How would you feel if next episode is back to being like episode 2 and you get 2 weeks of that?
I don't know, honestly, at this point. That is so confusing to me to just after like my thoughts were a lot clearer when I didn't rewatch this episode because it was just based on that one viewing.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, and now after watching this, I was like, I was even texting you. I was like, dude, I'm pumped. Like, I didn't even want to like watch something else in the middle of having finished that and then doing the pod because I was like, that music at the end when the scene of current day cast it just ends. You know that music, it keeps you in that somber like, oh my god, I wonder, and like the old like Marva looking back at young Cass smiling, and you're like, oh, that's young Marva smiling when she found Cass, and now she's crying when she's lost Cass, and you're sort of in that zone like, I wonder what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
Where I didn't want to like get out of that, and I don't know if I would feel that way with I think maybe because we've had so much setup where now I'm ready for the plot to just like
But
and the story to progress at a good enough pace and tempo.
but that's the thing. Like episode three is so specifically like a hype episode where it's all about the ramp up and it ends with the big like now we begin. But for example, episode two ended with Stellan Skarsgård just kind of like looking out the window and talking to Willie. So
Like,
like
uh,
that wouldn't have gotten me
talking
as hype as how this episode ended.
talking to Willie and also then Cassian just like walking somewhere.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not
just
like
like
he's
in
honest.
comparison, like they weren't doing
Yeah,
this before, where they're like trying to
yeah.
get you. So that's why, like, interested to see where we go.
I agree, and yeah, it'll be yeah. I think my points on all that are yeah. I think it felt like an origin story, like it felt like the Force Awakens in a nutshell. If you really think about it, where these new characters in this universe that are sort of set up, their motivations are set up, and now we're like, okay, now we're gonna see what happens in the next movie. Now that we've set up this whole world and these new characters and how they are and what they feel and also the how they are interconnected and how their relationship grows and how they grow as characters based on these events that have happened. It just felt weird for it to be 3 episodes. Either it should have been 2 episodes or 4 episodes, where now it's like 2 hours, which feels like a full movie.
But then with She-Hulk, for example, we were discussing and we said that we waited 3 weeks for those episodes, and they should have been all together coming out at once.
I know it's
It's a tricky
so
thing where like it
yeah,
depends
I
on the
agree.
project.
I agree. Yeah.
You
And had they done 4 episodes, maybe all that stuff would have been like like maybe they would have had so much filler. Where now, if you just look at one episode at a time of just episode one, two, and three, each episode is focused on literally one big thing. Where episode one is just setting up everything. Episode two is building character and world building. Episode three is the climax and the setup to this next adventure. So I guess that's how they couldn't do it 2 or 4 if they had to if they had to do it right in
Well,
terms of
these
a
three
story
really
structure.
felt connected in a way where like
Yeah,
it felt like it needed to be three to
it
me.
was an hour and a half long movie. That's how
Exactly.
it felt, and or an hour and a half long season to like season one. Like if
Yeah.
season one was 3 episodes, right?
Yeah.
We're like, okay, now we're on to season two. Another 3 episodes. I hope it's not that because it's going to be one full season, and the season should have that arc and that structure of build up, low point, and then climax. Which is why episode three was so fun because it's like watching the last 45 minutes of a great movie that has a great build up, and now you just get to see all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully, it doesn't disappoint. And your rating on this episode, we didn't do that in the beginning.
I give this a straight 9 out of 10.
Straight. Me too. Me too.
It was
I
great.
was at 9. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was great.
I
Beginning
was
to
there like 9.23.
yeah. Honestly, I just give it a 9 because I like it. I want it to be even cooler things. I don't know. It was amazing, but I really think it's the second half that really carried it. And there's a couple
Right.
of shots like the performance of Mosk where he's telling him like, oh, intimidation tactic, and then the
Right.
British cop. There were a couple of things, also the whole Tim thing, which were just kind of a little bit strange in terms of like they stuck out a bit. So I don't think it
Yeah.
was like a perfect episode, but I think it was amazing.
I agree. I agree on everything you just said. I'm going to echo it and repeat it.
Yeah, man.
It's
But yeah,
straight and concise to the point.
anything else
And
you want to add?
yeah, I just wanted to quickly add one quick two details that I noticed was that when the episode ends, the when the closing credits start and the music actually has clanking in it as part of the
Nice.
music. I thought that was a cool touch. I don't know if it is actually, maybe I'm like connecting things that aren't there. But if you go back and listen to it, you'll be like, maybe they did not like the same clanking, but clanking in the score.
Yeah.
So it's part of the score. So I was like, maybe the thing with that. And then I don't know if you want me to tell you what detail I noticed in the cast and the names of the characters.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they'll dole that information out in the future because I mean,
Yeah, go for it.
but sure. Okay. So this might be few spoilers, but it's in episode 3, Castle. Uh, the last name of Marva and Clem, both of their last names are Andor.
Oh.
Not just
So
Marva, Clem as well. This was the important thing. So maybe Andor is the name of the place and they adopted it.
I went somewhere completely different.
Oh, what was the other thing?
Clam's the father,
No, of Cassian?
as in the one that Luthen was talking about.
The one who got hung? No, I don't think. Oh, because he's not here now.
That is a touchy
But
one. If
there was
that
a
is what it
clear age
is,
difference. There was a clear age difference between
don't be
Clem and
ageist.
Marva. No, I'm not being ageist. I'm just saying there was a clear, like Clem literally it really
I know.
seemed like the
Okay.
sidekick to Marva.
I know. And also, I feel like that opens such a can of worms. I don't think they want to go there.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's why my brain didn't even go there. My brain was just like maybe Andor is a name of the place where Marva is originally from, and their people sort of just adopt the name, like Johnny Knoxville. Like it's a bad example, but he
Yeah,
adopted like his last name isn't actually Knoxville. He just adopted
I
because
don't
he's
know
from
now how
Knoxville,
like
Tennessee.
people get their last name in Star Wars. So I don't know.
Exactly. But it was a because it was a detail that's not mentioned in any of the episodes. Even the fact that why is his name Andor? We just assume because he's from Canary and they're
I
on
mean, it hasn't
Marlocks
come
and
up
they
yet.
mention Ferrex. Exactly. So I assume they will talk about it in the future because they've mentioned it in the cast.
Yeah,
But I just thought I actually, if had I cared that much about spoilers, I would have hated noticing this detail. I'll be very honest.
I feel like yeah, but they wouldn't put it in the cast list if they were not like we're trying to keep it hush.
Right. No, not hush, but just like I would have even then just
Like it's a
I would
choice
have
to
been
give him
pissed
the
that
last name, you know.
right, yeah, that could be.
But yeah,
But
you
the
were
fact
going to
that
be.
the show is named Andor and like it's like it's not called Cassian Andor, you know, the show is named Andor and yeah, but what I was saying was like
Good point.
I would have preferred like to find out all these little things while watching the show rather than like, hey, what's that? What? Oh, wait, what the? Like, they're both called Andor. Isn't the name of the show Andor? I thought that's Cassian's last name, and that like, yeah, I just don't know why they wouldn't have in the cast just as Marva and Clem.
Yeah, that's why it's a choice.
It's that they made that choice.
Yeah,
But yeah, I thought that was an important, a cool little nugget I found at the end.
yeah, that's a cool
That
detail. I didn't
all
notice
right,
that.
we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I almost hope that whatever I thought of isn't the case.
Yeah, I hope not, because what the hell, dude?
That's not the Star Wars. Like then we're getting a
That's
bit
not your
too
daddy Star
adult.
Wars.
We're getting a little too adult at that point.
Oh my god, dude.
But yeah,
Uh,
I think that's our thoughts on Endor. Anything
yeah.
else or
No, I think yeah, I think the chew of this would be like watching. How would you rather watch the episodes, all three at once or one by one? I guess that we leave up to the audience
yeah,
to
me
chew on.
personally, I didn't mind the 3 episodes. I was
Yeah,
personally maybe not ready for how long it's going to be, and that's why the middle was a bit. Also, like I didn't know what to expect. So I think for
right,
me
right.
overall, I still think the second episode would have dragged either way, and then I probably would have been worse had I have to wait another week And then maybe
Yeah.
if it was like a day or a couple of days, but like a whole week after episode two, I'd be sitting there like, oh, I don't know. I still like, I don't want to sit here for a week wondering what the show is. Where
Right.
like that's where with She-Hulk, it was after every episode, the first two
Mhm.
episodes. It was so clear that wasn't the show that I walked away
Right.
being like, okay, I need to tune in next week just so that I know what the show is and if I even like it. Where
Right.
those that show specifically still had like things in that where it was just like, okay, this feels just like this is not the show, but it was
Right.
interesting. Where here episode two was interesting, but I would have been sitting here as like, was it worth it? And
Right.
yeah, because I got to watch all three, it totally flipped my thoughts on episode two,
Mm.
and I totally thought it was worth it. So yeah, and then when we discuss episode four, we'll talk about how it feels in comparison to going weekly, I would say.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that as well. And I it's
Oh,
about
yeah.
yeah.
So why don't you sign us up?
All right. Thanks for watching and or listening, guys. And hope you enjoyed our podcast and our recap and review. Hope to see you guys next week for episode 4. Ring the notification bell, subscribe, leave us a review, 5 stars, 6 stars, whatever you like. Help us out. And thanks for tuning in. And see you guys next week.
Peace.
Peace.